Welcome to the Kongversation. I'm Hyle Russell.
And I am Mitchell F. Wolfe.
Yeah, so I forgot Mitchell's middle initial right before we were starting, and I guess T. And
yeah,
that's where our friendship is at right now.
F's are kind of like T's, but they got a little extra. They got a little extra thing going on in the middle.
You're chopping off the top left side of a T, and then you're like, oh, I'm sorry, T. Let me give that back to you. But then you're just exhausted from all that T chopping, and you can only
like
get it up so far.
On the side of your arm, and then you have it transplanted to your ear.
Wow. We're like so in sync. I was thinking the exact same thing. What is this episode, Mitchell? Okay. All right, here's what's happening, folks. Here is the deal. So I was sitting in my DK Vine palatial estate, being tended to by my butlers and my manservants and my pool boys, and they were feeding me various fruits and vegetables. And the vegetables were just like kale. They're just making me eat kale, and it got very unpleasant. But then Mitchell shows up at the gates, and he rings the bell, and I said, "Who is it?" And he said, "It's Mitchell F. Wolfe." And I didn't hear that because the kale was deafening in my mouth.
Yeah.
So he comes in, and it takes 40 minutes to get up the driveway because it's huge. But he then says,
"It's just honestly ridiculous." There's hills and valleys on the driveway. I don't even know how you use it for driving. It's crazy.
My family, they bootlegged during Prohibition, and that's how we made our fortune. So, which is why now that, alcohol is available on every block, I have to turn to Donkey Kong journalism to make ends meet. But I still have the estate, just because, that's the family left me, but I'm house poor, so this is why I do what I do. But anyway, Mitchell said, "Hey, Hyle, we should do an episode of the Kongversation on the Banjo-Kazooie Iceberg." And I didn't know what that was.
Yeah. So
that's my story.
Should I launch into this? Should I just start?
Well, okay. So icebergs. I know it's a social media / like Reddit thing. Where it's like, started with Super Mario 64.
Right. It was born within the Mario 64 community, and
I love that there's a Mario 64 community. It's not just like the Super Mario community or Mario fandom, a specific community for one game from 24 years ago.
Yeah, like we're going to be talking about a Banjo series Iceberg, but for them, it was just Mario 64. And they had this idea that there were so many mysteries about Mario 64, like the things you've probably heard of before, like, is Luigi really in the game? What is L is real? What's Eternal Star? All that kind of stuff. I want to say top level creepypasta and or like playground rumors that you would spread about Mario 64. A common
one, which is still a thing.
Yeah.
It's still a thing.
For sure.
Because I know one of the things that has cropped up was, I guess it was a creepypasta about like each copy of Super Mario 64 is personalized. It learns from you.
Yeah.
And it tailors the experience to your play style, meaning if you play a friend's copy or a rental copy, this would have been back in the 90s when rental copies were a thing and, you couldn't just emulate the game, but, it would feel off and different and creepiness ensues. I was first familiar with creepypastas from, which is just a nonsense term that I hate on the record. You could call it scary spaghetti and it would hold the same level of meaning for me. But
yeah,
I remember Majora's Mask had a lot of like creepypastas about there was a drowned boy who haunted it or something.
Yeah. Creepypasta is a corruption on a corruption already because it's from copy pasta, which is from copy and paste. Wow,
like, I hate the internet sometimes.
Yeah, but the idea with this is that there's some very top level things. Like I think the Eternal Star L is real thing is something that a lot of people know about within gaming. even if they're not necessarily big fans of Mario or Mario 64 specifically. But then, like you brought up, the every copy is personalized. That's a fan theory that goes a bit deeper, is a little less known. And the every copy is personalized thing, I think, initially got a lot of traction because some people have this Mandela effect memory of a thing called the Wario apparition, which is in the basement of Peach's castle in Mario 64. They imagined, like a good amount of people imagined Wario's head coming to them, like traveling through a hallway at the camera. And the reason for this is probably because Wario's floating head did appear in the castle basement of Mario 64 in an interstitial little cutscene that Nintendo made for E3 1996.
Yes.
So like that kind of thing it gets really deep, and it's not true. Like there's no version of the game where that exists. There's no version of Mario 64 with the Wario head, but you can have like an interesting discussion about it, I guess. And you can talk about how the community as a whole has sort of evolved through the years, because it's been quite a long time. And I think that's the interesting thing for me, just talking about how the community has engaged with this game, that these things are interesting. So because it's just this unofficial thing, I want to make a slight correction. We're not talking about the Banjo Iceberg. There is no the Banjo Iceberg. We're talking about a Banjo Iceberg. Someone made it. This is their take on what it would look like. The one we're using today is credited to Tevlev14, a Reddit user by the name of Tevlev14, who posted it to the Banjo-Kazooie subreddit. I was looking all over the place looking for like, okay, is there a good one? Is there a good Banjo Iceberg? And I think this is the best one I could find. It was certainly the one with the most effort put into it.
Yeah.
And I respect the effort.
Yeah,
so this is the one we're using.
So I saw the Super Mario 64 one in the peripheral vision of my online activities. I think Swanky Box or someone, maybe not Swanky. Swanky Box does a lot of like Super Mario 64 videos along this line of thinking, but I think it was recommended to me because I watched a Swanky Box video, and it was like Super Mario 64 Iceberg. How deep does it go? And I was like, what? I don't care. And then I started seeing it just pop up here and there. And then I saw a Donkey Kong version, which I like agreed with about 60% of it. And I was like, okay. And then you showed me this one, and I was like, well, you know, it has been a while since we've done an episode on the Banjo-Kazooie series, and I've been wanting to do an episode of the Banjo-Kazooie series. So sure, Mitchell, we'll talk about this Banjo-Kazooie Iceberg. And so if you're listening to this episode of the Kongversation, you can look it up based on what Mitchell just said. I will also try to post this. I will post the link on DK Vine for it in the episode description. No matter how you're listening to this, you can find it through there. So
right, cool.
You can follow along as we're going to go through this. So how does this iceberg image work? Because I see there's a standard stock image of the I mean, you've seen this before. This iceberg, you see the top of it, and then you see underwater. I think this is like a manipulation. This isn't actually a real photo of an iceberg, but it's to show what an iceberg would look like underwater and how deep it actually extends beneath the ocean.
Oh, I was under the impression it is a real image, but I could also totally believe that it isn't. Icebergs are sort of nature defying in that way. The real version of them looks crazy.
Oh, don't worry, Mitchell. We're hard at work at eliminating the iceberg problem.
Yeah, I want them all to be very believably sized, and we're getting there. But anyway, there's basically 4 tiers, and they correspond to depth of the iceberg. There's some things that are above the water, and then like 2 sections of underwater iceberg, and one at the very bottom, and they correspond to how exposed an average player of Banjo games would be to these mysteries.
Which is funny to me because some of the things on the very top, I would say, are not well known. While, like, I don't know, like, there's a lot of arcane stuff or things that I would assume be arcane stuff on this image. So maybe, you know, they were focusing, the creator of this was focusing on the most obscure of the most obscure, or something that only the diehards would know, and then breaking that up into 4 categories. But yeah, we can quibble about the order, but we're going to hit all of these, right, Mitchell?
Yep, we'll try.
And we're going to explain what they are, how valid they are, and basically give our expertise.
Yeah, I figured that we're the people to do it. You've been managing a Banjo and Friends fan site for a long time. And Banjo is my favorite series. So I think that if there's any people poised to do it, other than maybe that Twitter account that's popped up, the Banjo-Kazooie Facts guy, we might be some of the best people. Not to toot our own horns too much, but I feel confident about our ability to get through this.
Generally, yeah. I mean, I've been around since the inception of Banjo fandom. Started a website the next year that incorporated largely Banjo. I mean, a good chunk of what we talk about is Banjo. So, yeah, I mean, I feel pretty confident I can speak to all of these in some form or another. So, Mitchell, this is your idea, so I'll let you start.
Okay, we'll do it. So we'll start at the top, where I think it makes sense to start. And this is the section of the iceberg peeking above the water. So this has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 entries in it. And I really want to just get through them as fast as we can. I think some of them are very self-explanatory. For example, the topmost item, Project Dream, that was a game about a pirate adventure, not starring Banjo, but through a natural evolution of design changes, eventually became Banjo-Kazooie.
Yes, it actually started Dream. It was Land of Giants. It was ACM rendered on the Super Nintendo. It was the project that the Donkey Kong Country, the original Donkey Kong Country team, started after DKC2. Ed Bryan joined them, among others. It starred a young boy named Edson, who's kind of a proto-Cooper from Off of Grab by the Ghoulies, but it was more of a fairy tale themed, evolved into a pirate game on the Nintendo 64.
Oh, I've never thought about the connection between Edson and Cooper. They do look a lot alike, don't they?
Yeah, same team too, so I think they eventually came back around to the idea, but it became a more pirate adventure game with a slight tonal shift on the Nintendo 64, still starring Edson, but now we faced off against Captain Blackeye and his pirates. Of course, Captain Blackeye would later resurface in the Banjo-Kazooie series, and all of those elements from that version of Dream eventually came back around in some way in Sea of Thieves. So, a lot of evolutionary links between the Banjo team and this era of Project Dream that gave birth to Banjo-Kazooie when they just couldn't get Project Dream to work the way they wanted it to work. They eventually gave up, just decided to do Super Mario 64, but arguably better, and that's how we got Banjo-Kazooie.
Right on, moving on. Easy enough. Grunty deletes data.
Grunty deletes
data is something Grunty threatened to do in the Sand Castle in Treasure Trove Cove.
Yeah. If
you cheat too much.
And here's the thing, she would do it. That it wasn't just an empty threat.
Yeah. Now, it's been a long time since I've actually done this. If she deletes your data, but then you keep playing and then you save and quit somewhere else, does that still not save?
I don't know. I've never done it because I'm a coward.
I haven't done it mostly because I usually play on Xbox nowadays when I want to replay them, and it works differently.
Yes, the XBLA versions are different in a lot of ways than the original N64 cartridges, but I feel like the way I always understood it, and I've never actually done it, and I've never actually sought anyone out who has done it to verify this, but I always just assumed your game would basically, it would like initiate the equivalent to a game over sequence, exit you out of the game, and then boom, your data's gone, your file's gone. But I don't know.
Well, this is a bad start because we actually don't know how this second entry on the iceberg works. So,
but it's true. It's true in some way. So.
Okay. Yes. That I think is rightfully high up. I think people do know about that.
Yeah. In the live stream, by the way, we'll have our live stream team to back us up here because we are streaming this for our $5 and up patrons. Deadeye Dre says he's bringing out the N64 right now.
Oh,
thank you, Dre. Dre, also, you're up way too late. It's something close to 2 a.m. In the UK right now. So
yeah.
All right. Well, let me handle the next one here.
Yeah. Go for it.
DKR, which is what the hip kids call Diddy Kong Racing. DKR was Banjo's first appearance.
I would have put this above everything else. This is like it's very obvious.
Okay. This is something that is taken for granted from a lot of longtime fans who were there either from its inception or are students of history. But a lot of people either completely like don't realize this, think Diddy Kong Racing came second, or like they don't understand the way Banjo was introduced in Diddy Kong Racing. It wasn't just, hey, here's the star of Banjo-Kazooie or the co-star of Banjo-Kazooie. It actually went out of its way to debut Banjo. Like, here's this character. He is a friend of Diddy Kong. Diddy Kong's recruiting him. Here's how he relates to Diddy Kong's world. And then there's a blurb in the instruction manual. Oh yeah, he has a future partnership with a character called Kazooie, but we're not going to get into that here. So, for more on that, you can listen to the episode Jeff and I did about the forgotten Diddy Kong Racing and all the little bits of history with that game that are misinterpreted by younger gamers who weren't there and don't realize the chronology, the chain of events. But yes, DKR was Banjo's first appearance, not by intention at first. Diddy Kong Racing filled the gap that Banjo-Kazooie left in the Nintendo holiday release schedule of 1997. Banjo-Kazooie was delayed until summer 98. And so through some creative kung fu at Rare, they made Banjo debut in Diddy Kong Racing instead. And from that, a shared universe was born.
Yeah, I think I would have put this lower, or maybe where it's at, if Diddy Kong Racing was a less well-known game. But it was like one of the big ones at the time. Maybe not like the top 5 N64 games in terms of prestige or whatever. But like it's notable. If it was a weird Game Boy game where Banjo just appeared as a cameo or something, then maybe I would have put it lower.
Yeah, it set Guinness World Records at the time for most reserved game. So it was a huge deal when it came out. I would say its historical legacy has only been blunted due to the fact that it's not been commercially available since 2001. So
yeah. Okay, number 4, Mystery Door in Grunty's Lair. So this is the door on the opposite side, I believe, from the door you can enter in the machine room where Grunty plans on exporting the attractiveness from Tootie and putting it in her. There's another door in that room, and there's just nothing on the other side, and you can't open it.
Yeah, so this was a hotspot, a central point in the conspiracy theories and rumor mongering of before we even knew it as Stop and Swap, and that will be coming up a lot on this iceberg. Stop and Swap, of course, was the planned connection between Banjo-Kazooie and Banjo-Tooie, where you stop, pull out your cartridge and insert the other cartridge, and then the data from one would carry over into another. It was a risky little maneuver you could do with early N64s that Rare had planned on, and then Nintendo came out with a new model of N64 that made it impossible. So they had to change their plans for Stop and Swap, which is why we got the blunted version in Tooie. More on Stop and Swap later, of course, but Mumbo shows you this ice key and the question mark eggs at the end of Banjo-Kazooie if you got all 100 Jiggies. So in the summer of 98, well into 99, up to Banjo-Tooie's release and beyond, there were all sorts of conspiracy theories, as I said, on like how to get the ice key, what other secrets might be in Banjo-Kazooie, how the games are going to connect. And one of the biggest, like, weird things in Grunty's lair was this room. It had, like, the weird, like, door knocker thing on it that looked like a monster with glowing green eyes. And we looked at beta screenshots in Nintendo Power. We saw this same door. Come to find out, this would just be in the testing stage they would create. And then we saw screenshots of it in Nintendo Power. But out of context, it was Banjo in front of this door in a completely new environment. So it's like, wait, you can get through that door and then you're in this environment that we see in Nintendo Power. What does it all mean, man? And so we would go on internet forums. This is how I really dipped my toes for the first time in the online Rare community. I got on America Online at my friend's LA computer and found Rare's website, scoured it, eventually got America Online for myself because that was how Americans got online in 1998, Mitchell. And then from there, I registered on the Nintendo forums, Insider forums. That's how I met Chad. That's how we formed DK Vine. So really, this is right up my alley. That's summer of 98.
That door.
That comes back to that door, the transformation room door. And, I think with
I
the
really
Game
like
Shark
this kind of mystery in a video game because, especially in Banjo, because later the door in Gobi's Valley would be determined to be related to Stop and Swap. And that makes every door that can't be opened feel like, okay, there's got to be a mystery in this door. And really, this mystery door in Grunty's lair, I'm going to say is like the only thing in the game that looks so much like it should be interactable like this, like it should be openable, and isn't. It's really the only thing. So I've always wondered if they're gonna like remake it and not just like up-res it like they did for the 360, but if they ever remake Banjo-Kazooie, I would get cheeky and I would do something with that door.
I love pointless mysteries in games. Those early Grand Theft Autos, I think it was San Andreas, where it was like, there's Sasquatch in the game, or there are UFOs, if you look at a certain time in the night, stuff like that is either false or an urban legend or is in the game and it serves no purpose other than to make you run around like a cat chasing its own tail. I love stuff like that because it adds this replay value to the game that really can't be replicated with actually putting real things in the game. And no matter how disappointing Stop and Swap ultimately was, or the failed attempt at making up for Stop and Swap, the hope, the aspirations you could pin on things like the transformation chamber room door was just fantastic. It made my summer of 98 once we beat the game. And I think you can get through it with a Game Shark and with like modding the game and stuff like that. And there's nothing behind it. You can walk a little bit behind it and it's just a black void.
Yeah.
But then, it made you think, like, does it connect to Tooie? Well, Tooie have a lock-on cartridge like Sonic and Knuckles. And then you can, like, get to Tooie through this door. Crazy shit. And I really loved that time of my life where we had no Banjo-Tooie. Only Banjo-Tooie existed within our heads.
Yeah, Banjo-Tooie,
man, it was amazing.
Could have been anything. As a new Banjo game could still be anything. And I like the idea that these mysteries aren't locked necessarily to the past. Like, even though we kind of know what they're all about now, They could still be continued, but if we take this much time on every one, we will not finish. So we need to move on. Tootie is missing. Is the next one.
Tootie is missing. This is pretty basic. Tootie
was missing.
Living MacGuffin of Banjo-Kazooie was nowhere to be found in Banjo-Tooie or Nuts and Bolts or really any game after Kazooie.
She's not even in Pilot, right?
She's not even in Pilot. They basically just dropped the character like Chuck Cunningham or Judy Winslow or any unwanted sibling in a tacky sitcom. Tootie was dropped. The only reference to her in Banjo-Tooie was on a milk carton in Cloud Cuckoo Land, and it was missing Tootie, last seen in Banjo-Kazooie, and that was all we had to go on. The entire reason, the whole point of the plot of Banjo-Kazooie had gone missing. This missing child. This is actually the darkest damn thing they could have concocted. Yeah. And yet Banjo-Kazooie, nobody seems concerned by this. Like, theoretically, the whole idea behind Banjo-Tooie should be looking for the missing Tootie, but it was never brought up, except she did later resurface as a Minecraft skin. Mm-hmm. And so we've rationalized that she ran away to the realm of Minecraft.
Yeah, I wonder if we like to assume, and sometimes there's reason for this, and sometimes it's just tradition, that most games in the DKU take place at the moment that they are initially released.
Yes.
And I wonder if I might personally be breaking that for Minecraft, because I think it is fun if it happens in between... maybe in between Banjo-Kazooie and Grunty's Revenge. They all go to vacation in Minecraft Land, and Tootie just gets lost in there, and they try looking for her maybe a little bit, but then they just go home. And she's just in Minecraft Land forever.
Well,
because Banjo and the other ones are also in Minecraft.
Yes. I do think Tootie will come back in the inevitable next Banjo-Kazooie game, if for no other reason than she was in Spiral Mountain in Super Smash Bros. Ultimate, and Smash is the kingmaker. It really solidifies what is important to a franchise. It's why
she's going to get Tiny Kong. She's going to be taller than Banjo.
I would be fine with that too, but it's the reason K. Rool's on the Donkey Kong calendar for 2021. And it's why Tootie will be in the quote-unquote Banjo 3E. You heard it here first, folks.
Okay, so then next is Stop and Swap, and I think we actually already talked a lot about this.
We did, and I think this is the most known unknown of the Banjo-Kazooie series, where I think everybody who has cursory knowledge of Banjo-Kazooie to the point where, you know, they've played the games or they've like looked them up on a Wikipedia page will know Stop and Swap. They did misspell it here. They spelled it Swap, S-W-A-P, and in game it is spelled S-W-O-P.
Yeah, I guess they incorrectly didn't misspell it.
It's one of those weird rare spellings of things like hijinks with an X-S at the end. It's like, what? But yeah, Stop and Swap. Did you see
that I got Greg Mails to comment on that?
Yeah. What did he say? I forget.
He said, I thought it was funny, basically.
I just love
I asked him if it was a typo with the X and then the S.
Yeah.
And then he's like, no, I just like it.
I just decided to change the rules of the English language. I think it's funny that even Retro has held to that misspelling to the point where Homecoming Hijinks in Tropical Freeze still uses that spelling. It's great. All right, the next one, the last one at the upper quadrant of this iceberg. Rare games take place in same world.
Yeah.
For more on that, see dkvine.com.
Yeah. Even there's been some debate recently about the DKU and like what it is, and I think the actual thing of what the DKU is not the representation of like a pure representation of the rare shared universe, but it's still at least like looking at it. And if nothing else, just look at Donkey Kong or Diddy Kong Racing. It's got Banjo and Conker and Diddy Kong right there. That's pretty much enough to, I think, secure that knowledge that they are in the same world.
So there's a broader Nintendo shared universe and there's a broader Rare shared universe. What DK Vine talks about is really the Donkey Kong Country universe, which is kind of the Venn diagram between the two. But it's really just a classification to keep things pure for our site. So we're not talking about nonsense that has no relation to the beating heart that is our website, which is really the Donkey Kong Country series and everything that spins out of. So
that said, there are some rare games that I do think are not part of the same world. And that's just, you know, they're a big company. They've made a lot of things. It's okay. Like GoldenEye is not in the same world.
Okay, yeah. Obviously, GoldenEye is not in the same world. I will agree. There is a rare shared universe, and then there are rare games that do not take place in that shared universe. But I think it is definitely, factoring in their entire history and all the licensed games they made, in the earlier days, you know. But I would say, like, when you look at, like, just what is thought of as rare games,
the majority of their 60%. Main stuff, I think, I would say the biggest thing they've done that I don't and this might be a fighting point, I don't know what your take on this yet is, but I think the biggest thing that they've done that is not in that shared universe is Killer Instinct. And the reason for that is that while it has two characters that are from other rare games, kind of, with Sabre Wulf and Rash from Battletoads. This Sabre Wulf is not Saberman in werewolf form or the thing that Saberman fights in Sabre Wulf. And also that Rash does, if you look at the bio, it seems to be a different version of Rash, like something that exists in the Killer Instinct universe. That is like how when comics cross over, it means that both characters that crossed over are now in each comics universe, but that doesn't mean that doesn't always mean the entirety of that other universe is now in the first universe. Do you know what I mean?
I do. And that's really how DK Vine tends to look at crossovers, where like if something isn't natively born to the DKU, and so if two franchises cross over, like Banjo-Kazooie are in Sonic and Sega All-Stars Racing, for example. That doesn't mean all Sonic the Hedgehog games are necessarily canon to Banjo-Kazooie, nor does it mean all Banjo-Kazooie games are canon to Sonic the Hedgehog, but that one game is canon in both fictional constructs.
Yeah,
so
and at least that character exists in, like... Sonic exists in Sonic the character exists in Banjo's world, and Banjo the character exists in Sonic's world, but that doesn't mean like every past experience that both characters have definitely happened in the other world.
And that's really how DK Vine operates, is like everything from Donkey Kong Country is canon, and you know there are these crossovers and spin-offs, but we have to draw a line somewhere, or else DK Vine would be covering nearly all of video game history, and then that's just not what a Donkey Kong website wants to do. So, Anyway, so rare games take place in the same world.
But I think that the main bit is to say Banjo-Kazooie, because this is a Banjo Iceberg, is in the same universe as Conker, as Donkey Kong Country, as Sea of Thieves, as Sabre Wulf. Those are some of the big ones that we can definitely say for sure.
It's Mr.
And that's
Pants,
the top of the iceberg.
Viva Pinata, of course.
Viva Pinata for sure. Yeah.
Yeah. All right. So now we dive underneath the water, the chilly Arctic water, and now we are in the second tier. So this is, I think, more well known than what's beneath, but they're supposed to be less well known than the obvious stuff at the top, which I don't know about that. And some of this is kind where things get questionable for me. So, Mitchell, let's begin.
Blackeye's chest. It has Blackeye, the pirate, Captain Blackeye, in his appearance in Banjo-Tooie in Jolly Roger's Inn, has a chest.
Yeah, so I think this is similar to the mystery door in Grunty's lair.
Yeah.
After Banjo-Tooie came out, and the answer to Stop and Swap not working was, let's put Banjo-Kazooie cartridges that just spit out the ice key and the question mark eggs that we showed off at the end of Banjo-Kazooie. I think the letdown was so immense in the community. I was there. I remember we rationalized it and we were like, no, wait, this is misdirection. There's more to it. There has to be. And so we kept looking for the connection. And Captain Blackeye was a big part of that. And we would find out later that maybe there was a plan to have Blackeye activate Stop and Swap for you. But in our fevered imaginations as youth, we imagined Captain Blackeye would sail you back on the rusty bucket to Banjo-Kazooie. I don't even know how this would work, but so there were lots of things in Blackeye's little drinking room in Jolly Roger's tavern that we looked for clues, and one of that was, well, that's a mystery treasure chest. And I don't know if this ties into the treasure chest in Mad Monster Mansion, which, there's a portrait of Blackeye in there. And it's like, is there some connection between that? Ultimately, it was just a lot of imaginary delusions.
Yeah.
And we eventually made peace with the fact that there was no connection, but it took several years. And the Rare Witch Project, I think they were still at it well into the mid-aughts. I think into the Obama administration, they were still looking for what it all meant. So
I have a lot of both admiration and pity for the people that for the first couple of years they were finding things, and that was amazing. They were doing amazing work, and then they weren't, but they kept going, which was admirable. But then they still kept going, which was hard to watch. But I really those people are what makes the world go round.
All right, so I'm just checking in the live stream real quick just to see if Dre has an answer for us on the erasing of the files. And I don't see one.
Not yet.
Keep at it, Dre. All right, so moving on, we have Bottle's Revenge, and this is pretty well known to any hardcore Banjo zealot. Bottle's Revenge was a planned mode in Banjo-Tooie. I guess it was going to be a multiplayer mode, if you could call it that. But basically, Bottles, who died at the beginning of Banjo-Tooie and hung around the game as a wayward spirit over his charred corpse,
was funny that he died.
It's hilarious.
I just want that on record, that I think it's funny that Bottles died.
This was a year after Wrinkly Kong died too, so it was just you the dark kind of brooding humor that Rare was going for around this era really spoke to teenage me. But Bottles he had a kind of an angelic form as a spirit. Well, he was going to take a devilish form in this mode and possess really any enemy in the game, including bosses. And then the second player could actually fight Banjo and Kazooie, and I guess Mumbo on the adventure.
I had a Twitter interaction once with Andy Robinson. And
hold on, let me take a drink.
Andy said something to the effect of liking the more the darker, more introspective writing of Banjo-Tooie, but wanted it on Banjo-Kazooie's original formula, and he thought that would have been a really good mashup. And I said I said something to the effect of, yeah, I really like how Bottles dies in the beginning. It really sets the tone for subverting the adventure and everything. And then he just replies, I didn't like that.
Well, he shot you down.
Yeah. So it turns out that he's not a fan of Bottles dying at the beginning of Banjo-Tooie.
Well,
the next one is Mumbo's head.
Yeah, well, I was going to say they removed Bottles' Revenge because it broke the game. We all know
that Mumbo is a shaman who plays around with magic. And at some point, he did get cursed a little bit. Hold on. Okay.
No, because there's something about what you're about to say at the very bottom of the image, sir. I think what this is referring to, Mumbo's head, is simply there's a render that Ed Bryan showed off a year or two back of the back of Mumbo Jumbo.
Yeah.
His render from the original Banjo-Kazooie when his mask didn't like fully cover his head like a helmet, when it was just a half mask, which it was in the original Banjo-Kazooie, and you could actually see the back of Mumbo's head.
Yeah, I was getting around to that. I think this kind of goes into the idea of like when Mumbo got cursed to have a skull thing on his head. Did the curse make it so that is his new head, or did the curse make it so that's on his head permanently? And who's to say? Who would know?
I don't know, but he did switch skulls between Kazooie and Tooie.
Yeah.
So, but on the original skull, we have it confirmed that he does have a bald pink head behind that skull, and that's something.
I really like the upgrade from Kazooie to Tooie in Mumbo Jumbo. I think it's great. I think it's one of the best character redesigns that's happened.
See, I prefer the classic Mumbo because
he looks gross. I don't like him.
Yeah, he looks more
I don't like him
threatening. He looks creepier, and I like that. Because he's still a fucking weirdo. He's a fucking weirdo, and ultimately he's harmless to our heroes unless he gets the spell wrong. But I think he looks too cute in Banjo-Tooie. I will say he's got a better design in Banjo-Tooie. I will cop to that. I just prefer the original.
Okay.
All right.
Stop and Swap 2.
Stop and Swap 2. So this is from Nuts and Bolts, right?
It's, kind of. It's mostly from the Xbox Live Arcade version of Banjo-Tooie.
Yes.
So when the Xbox Live versions of the original games came out, they were given functionality that they did not originally have, but were planned to have, which was the working version of Stop and Swap, where you would find a bunch of stuff in Banjo-Kazooie that are only accessible because you have save data from later Banjo games. And you'd get that stuff, and then those later Banjo games would read that you have it and use that stuff. So the original Stop and Swap from Banjo-Kazooie puts items, 6 mystery eggs and an ice key in both Nuts and Bolts and later when it came out, the Xbox Live Arcade version of Banjo-Tooie. But when Tooie came out, it actually replaced all of the Stop and Swap things that you could originally find in Tooie because they had to put them physically in the game or else you couldn't get them because the original version of Stop and Swap just wasn't going to work. And made those things part of Stop and Swap 2, which basically worked like achievements on Xbox 360. And they do unlock things in Nuts and Bolts, but definitely don't feel like that's their end goal. And I think the point that this being here is trying to make is trying to say, like, hey, was there supposed to be another game that used these? No. And I think my personal theory is I mean, they didn't know. Maybe there wasn't, but it was an option. They kept the door open for themselves.
I think that era with nuts and bolts, there's definitely, as I actually, I think, talked about on the last conversation, there was this fatalism where they were just kind of treating it as the end of everything as they knew it at Rare. And so they were setting things up for possibly down the line, but they also kind of knew, like, assumed this was it. Now that's not to say that another studio or, in association with Rare, can't utilize that in the future for another Banjo game, but, who's to say? We don't know.
Yeah, and those Stop and Swap 2 items, what they unlocked in Nuts and Bolts were blueprints, and blueprints are cool because I think those blueprints were actually fan-made for a contest. So
nice.
They had fan blueprints brought in exchange, or to be the reward for bringing across Stop and Swap 2 things. But blueprints are also just blueprints. Like, you can make those things on your own. So I don't know if you're getting something. So for a lot of people, it felt like, okay, well, we didn't really get the thing for Stop and Swap 2. We're still waiting on that. Whether there was something planned or not, we'll probably never know. And it might still happen in the future. I was actually wondering, is it possible to read Xbox 360 save data from an Xbox One game? Or
yes.
Even further than that, an Xbox Series X game. And
yes.
it does appear to be possible.
Yeah, and that's the intention going forward, is that, they're still supporting Xbox 360 even in, the future. That, like, the plan is to keep everything connected, nobody gets left behind. And yeah, so Rare Replay works by using, it still syncs with your Xbox 360 data. So anyway.
Well, actually, Rare Replay mostly doesn't do that. Rare Replay actually looks at your gamer score, because the only thing that it looks for from the 360 games is the achievements.
Gotcha.
So that might not be how it works. And Stop and Swap 2 in the Xbox Live Arcade version of Tooie does not have achievements tied to it. So it might be more technical, but I think it's still possible. It's still happening on the same... If you have it on the same hardware, it can work.
It's still easier to pull off than the original cartridge-based Stop and Swap. So
probably true, yeah.
Yeah. All right. I don't know what this next one means. Exit to Lair.
I do. Pick me.
Okay, go.
Okay. In, I think, the manual for Banjo-Kazooie, there is a pause screen shown. And one of the options on the pause screen was exit to Lair. Like, you could just go back to Grunty's lair at any time in any place in the level. And it is not in the final game.
Okay.
Yeah, I assume that one of the reasons it was taken out is sometimes when you just warp a player from somewhere to somewhere else, certain aspects about the player character that the game is saving, like momentum and gravity and speed, things like that, might not be reset when you try to warp them just to the ground somewhere else. So, like, maybe if you were falling really fast and then you paused it and exited to Lair just during that fall, maybe you fall through the ground or something crazy.
Interesting enough, Ukulele did utilize that feature.
Yeah.
You could pause and exit to Hybrid Towers at any time.
Yeah, it's not impossible, but maybe it's something they just didn't want to have to deal with at the time, so they took it out. Maybe it was too glitchy. Or maybe they just liked pads, and they wanted you to use the pads.
All right. Character name contest, and this is from Banjo-Tooie. I think it was through a UK magazine, maybe the Nintendo magazine in the UK. It was like, hey, you can name a Banjo-Tooie character. And it ultimately, I think there were 2 characters that got named by fans, if memory serves. I think it was Old King Cole, the boss, and I think it was Chris P. Bacon, the scuba diving pig in
there's
Atlantis.
A third one.
There is a third one.
But I'm looking it up right now because I can't remember it. It's on the tip of my tongue, though. Crispy Bacon and Old King Ko were the ones I remembered. I was hoping you'd remember the third one.
No, I was hoping you would remember. I didn't even know there was a third one. I just remember Old King Cole and Crispy Bacon because they're objectively shitty names.
Bullion Bill.
Bullion Bill, okay.
Yeah. Oh, Cameron said it at the same time as I did. Yep.
All right. I had no idea Bullion Bill was fan named. I knew the other two, but yeah, Bullion Bill is a revelation for me, the quote-unquote Banjo-Kazooie expert. So I guess I have eggs from the pregnant Kazooie on my face.
We'll get to that. Banjo-Kazoomy.
Banjo-Kazoomy, yes.
We have confirmation from various sources that at some point there were at least 3 different Banjo racing games planned for Xbox, and they were all canceled. But this also could be the working title for Banjo-Pilot.
Yeah, the name first surfaced, I think, in media asset packs for Banjo-Pilot. And that's the logo for Banjo-Kazoomy was in there. And we were like, well, that's a way better name than Banjo-Pilot.
It is.
It is. Well, they really like that name because they kept like banding about for all of these Banjo racing games, some Banjo racing games, some of them were general rare racers. And this is like after Donkey Kong Racing / the early racing version of Saberman Stampede. Like this is past that era when Saberman Stampede was more of a like adventure game. And then they're like, well, let's do a Banjo racer. This was pre and post Nuts and Bolts. Just never got off the ground, even though they did quite a bit of work on at least one build of it. Banjo-Kazoomy, though, yeah, I love the name, and it's just a shame we never actually saw it attached to a game.
Yeah, I totally agree. Next is Grunty's Revenge Continuity? Question mark?
Question mark?
Yes.
Yes, it is in continuity. I guess they're just asking, is it in continuity? And the answer is yes. Is it a retcon? Is it basically ignored by the mainline console Banjo games? Yes and yes. But it's canon. It's canon. There's no reason why it couldn't be canon. It fits nice and snug between Kazooie and Tooie. Originally, it was bandied about that it was going to be this alt-universe story in place of Banjo-Tooie. And then they dropped that when they realized that was confusing. And they were like,
and also, like, people like the story of Tooie. I don't know why you'd replace it. And maybe this is asking about the endings of Banjo or Grunty's Revenge, because there's one where Banjo clones himself a bunch of times by utilizing time travel in a weird way. And that is not in continuity. That's like the bad ending.
I mean, you always have to assume the best ending of any game is canon, unless the sequel confirms that no, actually this happened. But
yeah, if there's a new Banjo game in the future and we find all of Banjo's clones, then I guess that's the ending that's in continuity.
There is the theory that the severed Banjo head in the Cock and Plucker in Conker's Bad Fur Day is actually one of these time displaced doppelgangers of Banjo. And to that cool. I say maybe, but I think the implication is that the best ending is canon. But Grunty's Revenge on a whole, yes, it's in canon. Every game is in canon. We don't just randomly decanonize games. It just doesn't. It's just not a thing in the DKU. Next down the list, Fungi Forest painting. And oh boy, where to begin? So in Banjo's house, there is a painting of Banjo standing in an environment, this mushroom-strewn forest that was seen in early renders of the game, promotional renders of the game, was not seen anywhere in the game. And it was theorized that this would be tied into Stop and Swap. This was maybe one of the worlds attached, because in Nintendo Power, they listed one of the planned levels for Banjo-Kazooie was Fungus Forest. And then, of course, in Donkey Kong 64, we eventually got Fungi Forest. But we later learned that no, this actual screenshot was from an early build of Banjo-Kazooie after they dropped Edson and Blackeye and decided to make a game starring this bear named Banjo. This was an early build of this kind of like almost 2.5D game that we actually saw footage for the first time when Rare released their Project Dream video, I think at the beginning of 2016.
So this, I think what it means from a development sense, you nailed. But I also like the idea of what it means in universe, because Banjo just has a picture of himself standing blankly in a forest doing nothing. And I really like that. He's not even doing... This wasn't like a commemoration of a special thing for him. He's just sort of hanging out in the forest, standing still with his arms on his side. And he just has a picture of that, and he looks at it before falling asleep every night.
Yeah, I mean, it's like me. I was in the forest to reduce my anxiety for several days the other week. And I'm not even smiling. And I miss it. And I think back to it quite a bit. And I'm like Banjo in that picture. But yeah, that's the history behind it. But it was one of those hot points of stop and swap discussion for several years. And because it looks like a clue, it looks like it's because like you said, in universe, it makes no sense for it to be there unless it's pointing to something bigger, and it's not.
Yeah. Maybe. No, I have no idea. The next one is Gobi went to Fire Eyes Mountain.
Okay, well, this is wrong on a couple points.
It should be Mount Fire Eyes.
Mount Fire Eyes. So this pairs nicely, like a nice cheese with the wine of what we just talked about.
Yeah.
So Mount Fire Eyes was also one of these name drop worlds in early publications like Nintendo Power, along with Fungi Forest and Hammerhead Beach. All these names name dropped in 1997 for planned locations of Banjo-Kazooie that, of course, were not in Banjo-Kazooie. Fungi Forest arguably became Fungi Forest in Donkey Kong 64. Hammerhead Beach was just a working name for Treasure Trove Cove. Mount Fire Eyes was the planned lava world that was ultimately postponed until Banjo-Tooie, where it resurfaced in the reconfigured Hailfire Peaks.
Right. So Gobi said he's going to the lava world, which at the time, the only thing we had for that was Mount Fire Eyes. Might have been planned, might not have really been planned. It depends on like what stage of development they really were at with those extra levels when that Nintendo Power came out, or if that was even real at all. Nintendo Power is weird sometimes.
And I'm going to be doing a big stop and swap episode with Steve from Rare Gamer this November, December for the 20th of Banjo-Tooie. But there was of course the lava room in Grunty's Lair, where the entrance to Mad Monster Mansion was, and Cheeto was up there too. So of course this unique element in the layer that was not tied to any known world, and then Gobi mentions the lava world, and we knew about Mount Fire Eyes, and so my theory was, of course, this big empty chamber in Grunty's Lair. Once you unlocked it with Banjo-Tooie, the entrance to Mount Fire Eyes was going to rise up from the lava chamber. You would go through it and then be in the lava world. No.
No. My theory is that was never planned, but at some point that was just where the lava world in Kazooie was going to go.
For sure.
Which seems... nothing's confirmed that, but nothing's really contradicted it either, and it seems like a reasonable thing to believe.
For sure, yeah. My theory, alternate theory at the time was that Jet Force Gemini had a lava world, and Gobi would show up in Jet Force Gemini, making that game DKU. And I was wrong there, too.
Yep. Next one, Ice Key True Function. So it kind of depends on what they mean by true function, because the true function is the Mega Globo that you unlock in Banjo-Tooie that lets you turn Kazooie into a dragon. That is the true function, because it's true. It might mean original function. So we know now that Stop and Swap was actually not just for Banjo games, and was supposed to be for a lot of different rare Nintendo 64 games, including Banjo-Tooie, but also including Donkey Kong 64, Perfect Dark, probably Jet Force Gemini, Conker's Bad Fur Day.
Yeah, it was really... It's really going to bring this notion of a shared universe into this tangible thing where you can knock all these items around, spread the love among Rare's entire output on the N64 post Banjo-Kazooie. Didn't happen. And so we can only speculate on what the ice key true function was, but we know from code in the game that it was going to be brought into Donkey Kong 64 at one point. So that doesn't mean it wouldn't also have a use in Banjo-Tooie. But
it would have done something in Crystal Caverns, probably. Yeah. I think it makes sense to be there.
We know from animation found that, yes, it would have... In Crystal Caves, there would have been something the Ice Key did.
But that's not the true function, because it didn't happen. It
didn't happen. The only thing the Ice Key does is it unlocks the safe that the Mega Globo is in.
Yeah.
Yeah,
and it gives you a car part in Nuts and Bolts.
Right.
Ooh, I wish I could remember which one.
So anticlimactic.
It might be Royston.
Yeah, it's Royston or Mr. Pants, but I think it's one of those. But it's been a while.
I don't want to fail this episode. I don't want this Iceberg to beat us. I want to have all the information. Ice Key, Nuts and Bolts.
We could just ask the live stream because they're on top of things right now. Jeff is arguing about us dismissing the multiple time displaced banjos in Grunty's Revenge as a plausible canon route.
British flag. Just for the British flag.
British flag. That's all it does?
Yep.
So we were both wrong.
Well, each of the eggs do something. One of them is Royston. One of them is a little Mr. Pants thing.
Okay. All right. There we go.
The ice key is the British flag. And it can also be found, according to the Banjo-Kazooie.fandom.com, in Banjo Land, stuck in the melted snowman and in the Terrarium of Terror, where it must be collected as a Jinjo fetch item. The Jinjo says he will swap the ice key for a Jinjo token. After he receives the ice key, he says that he will ponder over the mystery of it. There is also a picture of Banjo and Kazooie holding it, as well as the pink mystery egg. Cool.
Yeah. Also, there's an ice key, 2 ice keys or something that resurface in Glitter Glaze Glacier in Ukulele. So, ice keys all around. But Jeff is arguing that the banjo head and the cock and plucker is a thing, but also in Grab by the Ghoulies, there is the severed banjo head in the hallway. So,
yeah, and one time I left my keys in the freezer by mistake, so they were very cold and icy.
Yeah, so that's another ice key. There you go.
Yep, that's another one.
Log 720 - Frantic Factory.
Yep. It's the music. There's an excerpt from the song that is the melody of Frantic Factory from Donkey Kong 64.
It's interesting that they got away with that, but they made sure to remove, I think in Blast Core and Rare Replay, a song that was in Donkey Kong Land.
Yeah, I mean, there's no... It's pretty different. It's just sort of like an allusion to it. Kirk Hope does that a lot. He also did that with in Mario plus Rabbids, the mid-boss theme has an allusion to the melody of Klungo's theme, which makes sense because he is also a mid-boss.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, that's a cool musical thing. We can go into more. There's a lot of those around. I don't know if they talk about Clanker and Wrinkly, but I don't think that's on here. But that's the same melody as well.
Sure. I mean, it makes sense when Grant Kirkhope is composing. It's especially the latter one you just mentioned, because when he's composing games that like basically they're on top of each other, you're gonna get some melodies that are similar or outright the same.
Yeah, for sure.
All right. All right.
Space World Demo equals 3. Actually, it doesn't.
It doesn't. No. So the Space World demo was basically something Rare concocted for the Space World show. I think this was in the year 2001. I want to say.
Yeah, it'd be 2001.
For the GameCube, maybe. But they're just showing how many damn characters you can fit on the GameCube on the screen at the same time, and they did this stampede of Banjo-Tooie characters chasing Mumbo Jumbo through this like ravine or canyon.
Nintendo asked Rare to do something to show off the GameCube, and Rare kind of didn't really have anything, so they threw this together using Tooie assets. But because it was on a new console, it looked fairly enough like a new Banjo game. But it just wasn't. It wasn't meant to be anything.
We like even at the time we knew it wasn't anything, but we still decided to run start a Banjo 3E page on DK Vine with screenshots from these very low res beginning of the century kind of internet video screenshots. I wish this existed in a higher res. It would just be cool to look at.
Yeah.
But so many people hold this up as, see, Rare was going to do Banjo 3E for the GameCube if that dastardly Microsoft hadn't gotten in the way. No, this is the same kind of thing you would see. I think the Mario 128 trailer or whatever it has been gone under with all the little Marios running around.
Well, that was at least playable at some point. Yeah. This was really just an in-engine cutscene.
It's just one of those early things that's held up as a version of the game that never really existed, and it had held no weight. Rare, there's nothing to say Rare would have done a Banjo 3E unless Nintendo pressured them to do Banjo 3, because they still had a stake in Banjo at the time. But
yeah, I think the thing with tech demos is sometimes tech demos do become full games. Luigi's Mansion was one, and that's just it makes it so when you see a tech demo that looks cool, you're thinking like, oh, could this be the new game? And this one just didn't have anything going for it.
No.
It wasn't going to be a game.
It looked like Banjo-Tooie, except with a lot more going on. So, yeah. Temple Test Level Giant's Lair. So this is the testing world that I mentioned before that was in a lot of early screenshots of the game that we actually saw in nice high-res video footage at the beginning of 2016 when they showed the history of Dream on Rare's YouTube channel, tied in with the release of Rare Replay several months earlier. One of the theories was that this was the Giant's Lair in the original version of Dream, which didn't look like this at all, which was ACM graphics and kind of a 2D scrolling game. So I'm not really sure how these correlated.
The Temple Test Level and the Giant's Lair?
Yeah. One of the theories was in the screenshots, this was when there was a giant in the game instead of Gruntilda as the antagonist. And that's just completely leapfrogging the fact that Captain Blackeye was the antagonist.
That level was always just a test level. So
yeah, it was a test level. It was never in any final version of any game, or had no correlation to when it was Land of Giants.
I think there is some stuff that you could say that it informed the design of Mayhem Temple later.
Sure.
Because there's some stuff that looks similar, especially in the temple part with the 3-story thing. Yeah.
And the door in the transformation chamber room was also taken from this. So
cool. Umi Knackers.
Umi Knackers, this is Grant Kirkhope. This is something he would say about his balls.
Yep. He had to go to the doctor, as described in an episode of Game Grumps where he guested. He talked about one time where his testicles hurt very badly, so he went to the doctor, and there was a nurse there, and he had to tell her, "Ooh, Umi Knackers." So he did that, and I guess for some reason he told the rest of Rare about it. So they made it be what Mumbo says.
And to be fair, Grant Kirkhope talks about his testicles quite a bit, so
it's
I don't
a fun
even think
thing
this
to
is
do.
that. I mean, yeah. So anyway, yeah, Umi Knackers. That's yep. Nuts and bolts equals 3E. So they're really getting hung up on what equals 3E. Space World demo. No, nuts and bolts. Well, this is more agreeable than the Space World demo. I'll give them that much.
It's certainly the third console Banjo game. If that's what it means to you to be 3, then I guess it is.
It's the third Banjo game that had development from the Banjo team, like Greg Mayles and crew. So sure, from that, like, it's not like gameplay wise. Just the third
I just realized
iteration.
It says nut and bolt. So that's 3.
Oh, well, we haven't gotten nut and bolts yet, so it might be right. You know, we don't know. Banjo 3 nut and bolts.
So what this might be referring to is the development of the game, where it began as a new Banjo game, and they wanted to make the worlds bigger because that's what they were doing from Banjo-Kazooie to Tooie. So Tooie, the next thing should be even bigger. And then, like in a natural design progression, they realized, okay, well, if the worlds are this big, you want a way to get around them fast. And if you want to get around fast, it'd be weird to just make you walk that fast. So let's put you in a car. And if you can be in a car, why not a plane? And if you can be in a thing that's a car or a plane, maybe you can customize it to do either one. Oh, it's a different game now.
Whoops.
So, whoops. This won't have ramifications. So, like, I guess maybe they're saying at the beginning of that, they might have even just called it 3 because it would have been pretty close. But at the end of that, it was so different that I think Rare realized they couldn't call it 3. It's not what that is anymore.
Well, also, I don't even know how marketable the name Banjo 3E actually is.
That is another good point.
Banjo 3E was a joke at the end of Banjo 2E, but fans are 20 years later still holding their feet to the fire on this.
It's a bad joke. It was a bad joke because they did it the first time and it wasn't a joke. You can't do it the second time and have it be a joke. It's a bad joke. They brought it upon themselves.
They really did. All right.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry. You go.
No, I'll go because I really want to read this misspelling. Why BK Serini in Grunty's Lair?
Why BK Serini in Grunty's Lair, Hyle?
I don't know what this is referring to. What?
Okay, so I think I know what this is referring to.
Scenery. I got that much.
In places like, I'm thinking specifically the top of the some of the pyramids in Gobi's Valley. It looks like Banjo and Kazooie. So, like, why? Why would they be inside Grunty's lair?
Well, the realms of Grunty's lair are not necessarily Grunty's lair. They are their own environments that you can access through Grunty's lair. And as we saw in Grunty's Revenge, the entire Spiral Mountain region has these gateways, these portals, and it's actually tied to Master Jiggy Wiggy. But anyway, that's a whole nother thing. I just assumed that Breagles and bears have had a long history in these realms, in these worlds. In Sea of Thieves, we've got cave paintings, the prophetic cave paintings from the ancients of a bear and a bird. And I assume this is more of the same kind of thing.
Yeah, my headcanon on this is that as early as Sea of Thieves, so 300 years before Banjo-Kazooie, there was the prophecy that a bear and a bird would one day ward off a witch, and that's important somehow. And this grew into maybe like folklore or even a religious status. So people started putting Banjo and Kazooie's face, even though they were not Banjo and Kazooie. They were just what bears and birds sort of look like, and like a guess of what might happen on some of these pyramids and stuff. So they actually aren't even of Banjo and Kazooie. They're of what they assume the prophecy, the prophesized heroes will look like.
I think fans take things too literally sometimes. It's like the Donkey Kong head on Donkey Kong Island. I don't think it's literally Donkey Kong. It's one of its ancestors who just happens to look a great deal like Donkey Kong. But you can't just read it as, oh, that's just Banjo and Kazooie. Why are they there in all these statues and paintings and whatnot? No, it's either a prophesized version of them or it's another bear and a bird entirely. Just deal with it. Banjo X. So this is another failed attempt at bringing a Banjo project to one of the Xbox consoles. In this case, this was an early attempt on the original Xbox, I believe, around the time of Live and Reloaded's development. There were plans to do a new version of Banjo-Kazooie, the original game, on the Xbox. But one of the conceits of it is things would go differently. So you'd be playing the game and then it would surprise you with a twist. This doesn't play out like it originally did. Haha, gotcha. And we've seen like animated like characters from this project. I think we saw Conga, some of the termites, Tip Tup maybe. We've seen like I think Ed Bryan mostly shared these. Big Butt, yeah. Ed Bryan mostly shared them. It looked cool. Ultimately, I'm glad we never got it because I don't know, Mitchell. Like, I know there's this big movement for like Banjo remastered, Banjo redoey, and you know, personally, like, I've never been a fan of just having an old game and like having like newer graphics. Like even Live and Reloaded. I always prefer the original because the original is what spurs my imagination, and to mess with that, I feel like it's just, I would just rather have a new thing or nothing at all.
I'm kind of in the same place. I really like ports. I want games to be ported as many places as possible, but yes. Remasters, well, I mean, what they did eventually with the Xbox Live Arcade, where it is remastered in some ways because suddenly Stop and Swap works. Like things are different. I'm all about it. That's great, but that's like very small changes, and that's actually more of a restorative process. That's not really changing what it was supposed to be. That's adding what was always supposed to be there. So I guess I'm saying that. Although one idea that I've had that I think would be really great would be if they took Grunty's Revenge and made it in the gameplay style of the original N64 Banjo games, in full like third person 3D and everything, and use that as a launching point to see like, well, here's what basically amounts to a new Banjo game because it didn't work this way before. And can kind of coexist with the Game Boy Advance version. It's very, very much a different thing, but we can also use this to test, like, okay, what's the market for a new Banjo game? I think that would be cool.
Yeah, maybe. My thing is, I just want the original game to always be available, accessible in the modern era, and I'm less about, like, I want the same thing but better, because in my mind, you know, you can't beat nostalgia, you can't beat the experience of when you first played a game. So it's not so much like bring it into the modern era, just make it accessible, make it available, and let the chips fall where they may.
So that's the halfway point.
That's the halfway point. Although some of these I don't think we're going to be talking that much of, because some of these are nonsense as we go down further. Some of them aren't.
Get weird.
Some of them aren't. So now we are in the third tier. We're down to the tip of the iceberg, not quite beneath it, but we are hanging on the bottom. We're getting the bends. Banjo clothing damage. I have no idea what this is.
So, two things that this could be about, and I'm honestly not sure which one it is. It could be how in Nuts and Bolts, Banjo's clothing, and most of the clothing, really, are all patchwork and like very obviously sewn together, like they've been ripped or something. So, did he just fart real bad and explode his shorts? Like, how'd that go?
I think he's thrifty. Like, you know, he's not part of our throwaway culture, Mitchell. So if he tears his pants, he's gonna fix them. He's gonna hem them.
Yeah. So there's that. The other thing it could possibly be about is, I think I might be making this up, but this has been an idea that a lot of games have tried. That when Banjo would get hurt and lose damage, it would be visible that he's damaged.
He's gonna get a face tattoo that says "damaged."
Yeah, he gets that when he's down to 2 honeycombs remaining. But yeah, I think like his shorts were maybe gonna tear a little bit or something like that. I might be making that up. I know other games have tried that.
Cameron in a live stream says it's probably about the 2.5 build. If I recall, Banjo would have had a hat and stuff that would fall off as he got hurt.
What's the 2.5 build?
The Fungus Forest build.
Oh, okay. Cool. Oh, that is what it was. Yeah,
okay.
It was supposed to be more obvious visually what the damage was, but then they just instead went with showing you how many honeycombs you have left, which is, for design reasons, better. It's more obvious.
Yeah. Also, that was when Banjo was going to be more of a skater and less of a mountain hillbilly / European shorts aficionado. So, Yep. All right.
Puzzle rooms equal beta world leftovers.
Puzzle rooms equal beta world leftovers.
Oh, I was hoping you'd know this one. I don't know this one.
This is a puzzle in and of itself.
Yep. Right. I don't know. I really have no idea.
Does it mean puzzle? Is puzzle room? Does it mean the because I'm thinking the actual puzzles from like Jiggy Wiggy in Banjo-Tooie, like his temple, but that's not what it's referring to.
No, I think it's referring to like data mined levels that are on the cartridge, but you can't play them. And they might have just been like the beta of the game. That's what I'm assuming they're talking about.
Dre is speculating that it's the rooms where you do the puzzles that unlock the worlds in Banjo-Kazooie, because the one for Click Clock Wood is quite far off from the entrance itself.
Oh, okay, yeah. So I think the speculation is that because the Click Clock room, the Click Clock, wood.
Yeah, no, I know
so
wood.
Far away that was
Mitchell,
where Click Clock Wood was originally going to be.
Mitchell, I've had wood since we've started this discussion, because nothing gets me randier than obscure and quite vague facts and innuendo about a 22-year-old video game.
I'm happy for you and your wood.
Yeah, I know. Like, one of the like common things that get bandied about that has no weight or relevance is that the Click Clock Wood, quote unquote, like puzzle room, the entrance to not the entrance, but the room that houses the puzzle where you open Click Clock Wood, was originally connected to Fungus Forest, and I think it's just. Or like Clanker's Cavern was originally a more natural environment, because in beta screenshots, Clanker was more of an organic whale and it was in a forested area. I don't know how much weight that has. As a game, evolves over time, myriad of ways that and explanations that, for how things could have been. But I think it's trying to ascribe a master plan to something that was just natural game development. And it just happens to be here because at one point this was there and that was there, but now this is here and the game just evolved this way.
Well, it could be that. And I think the fact that when around the painting that you use to unlock Clanker's Cavern, it's sort of more natural, and when you go in there, it's not more natural. That could be a beta thing, because we knew that level was going to be more natural feeling. But I think stuff like the Click Clock Wood opening being really far away is like... That's game design. That's like a good thing. Have you played a Metroid game? Have you things are far away sometimes. It's on purpose.
Yeah. There's never like an entire 1-to-1 correlation between the puzzle location and the world entrance. And I like that, they see Click Clock Wood that early in the game. Like, oh yeah, here's this world. You don't have enough puzzle pieces for it yet, but it's coming. Don't forget. Come back.
Yeah. Also, Dre brings up the point that it could have originally been meant for Fungi Forest. Yeah, maybe. I don't think that, but it's possible. I'm not taking it off the table as a legit thing. Also,
Dre, you haven't deleted your save file for us yet. What's your problem?
What's the problem, Jay? You said you were going to get around to the save file. What's going on?
Delete your most precious save file for us.
How's your life at home? How is it going if you're not going to delete your save file for us?
Why? What is your shtick you're doing? Why are you an old Jewish grandmother?
I'm Dre's grandmother. I don't know. There's only one bed. Banjo's house only has one bed, but Tootie lives there too. Gross.
Why are you a Mike Myers SNL character all of a sudden? I don't understand.
I just knocked one out while you were making fun of me. Go on to the next one. Diddy Kong Pilot.
I know, sorry. There's only... let me deal with this and put this one to bed. There's only one bed. The joke being Banjo and Kazooie, they live in this house, but there's only one bed.
No, not Kazooie, fucking? Because Kazooie can live in the backpack. The problem is Tooie.
Well, okay.
Tootie.
Tootie, not Tooie. Tootie.
Right. The sequel to Tooie.
Here's my thing. I know it's implied that Tootie lives there with them, right? But it's never actually explicitly stated that she lives there with them.
Oh, you think she's visiting?
I think they have parents that live just above the valley of Spiral Mountain, and she just runs down there every day to bother her big brother.
I think for reasons that definitely should be on this iceberg but are not, we cannot assume parents because of things like what Chris Alcock did.
Okay, but what Chris Alcock did is so obscure. And
that should be that's what this is for, though. That's at the bottom of the iceberg.
That's 8th tier at that point. That's something that only people who read DK Vine and follow Chris Alcock on Twitter would ever know. So, anyway, my point being, I always assumed as a child, as a young, supple summer child. I don't know why supple came into it. I don't know why. What's wrong with me? I always assumed that Tootie
did. Just a squishy child.
Basically a jellyfish. No, I just assumed Tootie was just visiting, and that there's only one bed because Banjo sleeps in the bed, Kazooie sleeps in the backpack, and Banjo and Kazooie are not fucking because a man and a woman can just be friends without anything sexual coming between them.
Yeah. I'm friends with a bird.
Yeah. I mean, we all are, Mitchell. Don't brag.
There's a duck that I visit in the ravine sort of near my apartment building, and I am friends with that duck.
The ravine where they shot the Banjo 3 Space World demo.
I just realized that I've known this duck for quite a while now, quite a few months, and I've only ever called it Duck. I could get a name for this duck.
That's actually cruel and callous that you just referred to it as Duck.
Yeah. I believe the next highest one up is incorrect N64 logo.
Oh, we're not going to do Diddy Kong Pilot?
I think that's lower.
Of course, it's vaguely in the middle. Okay.
Whatever. Well, no, I'm doing it. So, incorrect N64 logo. The colors are not the normal one in the intro. Some of the things that should be blue or green.
Yeah, we can take this to Cameron, who's hiding out in the live stream chat. But Cameron has pointed this out that I think a lot of games use the incorrect N64 color combination on the N64 logo, which is that big 3D N that Rare would often animate and that Clanker would in fact kill in Conker's Bad Fur Day.
Oh, also Cameron is pointing out in the chat that the banjo render at the top of this image was scanned by him back in the day, and it's just still floating around the internet.
It's from it's actually it's his Diddy Kong Racing render on the superimposed on the Diddy Kong Racing character select screen.
Yeah, I think that's right.
Yeah. Anyway, Cameron says, Cameron hasn't said anything about the N64 logo, so I don't even know if we need to belabor this.
No, the colors are wrong, and it happened in a bunch of different games as well. No, it's very common that they didn't exactly model that 3-dimensional N exactly correctly.
To be fair, I don't know what the right color combination is, and I don't care.
Yeah, I do not care. I think they probably all just sort of watched the first game that did it wrong, and they took it from that. So, whatever. Diddy Kong Pilot. That was Banjo-Pilot before it was Banjo-Pilot.
Yeah, it was announced at E3 2001, and it was one of the slew of games Rare announced at that E3, alongside Donkey Kong Racing and Donkey Kong Coconut Crackers and Banjo-Kazooie Grunty's Revenge. 3 of those games didn't see release, at least in their original form. Coconut Crackers became It's Mr. Pants, and Diddy Kong Pilot became Banjo-Pilot. And there's a whole sordid history there, but remnants of Diddy Kong Pilot remain in Banjo-Pilot, including music with suspicious monkey noises in it. And, of course, Espresso, the ostrich, still appears in Banjo-Pilot.
Yeah, basically there was a push for new Rare things. They could still be on portable consoles, but if they could do it in a way where their new owners, Microsoft, would actually have full ownership of that IP, they should, is, I guess, what they were trying to go for. They obviously didn't do that 100% of the time because they remade the Donkey Kong Country trilogy and Diddy Kong Racing, but those are remakes. You can't really take Donkey Kong out of that. So, yeah.
Yeah, and also Nintendo didn't want to publish Diddy Kong Pilot because they thought the game was pointless. So,
fair enough.
Yeah.
It had some really good voice acting, though.
It did. Sabre Wulf hint.
I don't know what this means because if they're calling the appearance of Sabreman in Tooie a hint, that's a pretty heavy hint.
No, what they're referring to is after you rescue Sabreman and you come back to his tent, he'll say, "Maybe I'll ride a dolphin," and that was referring to the GameCube. The code name for the GameCube was Project Dolphin, and it was them hinting that they were going to make a Sabre Wulf revival for the GameCube, which is of course
weird because the next console Sabreman game that was ever in development, to our knowledge, is Sabreman Stampede, which was what Donkey Kong Racing was going to be, and at that time, I bet they still thought it was going to be Donkey Kong Racing. So why?
They were just, I think Rare was feeling really auspicious at this time, and they were like, we'll set up a Sabre Wulf game on the GameCube.
We did 12 N64 games, we'll probably do 24. GameCube
games. Yeah. So they're just like, let's revive this old rare IP of this British imperialist explorer that will really go over well in the new millennium. And
I like Saberman, but I can't point to a thing that has a smaller potential market demographic.
Yeah, I mean, I think they were hoping to use his appearance in Banjo-Tooie to like spin him out into new great things, and there was interest on DK Vine for it, but then of course the buyout happened, and they decided to give Donkey Kong Racing to Saberman, and that became Saberman Stampede, and then that eventually just never finished development, and it fell apart like so many projects on the Xbox and Xbox 360. All right.
So Cameron Regal is saying in the chat, I don't think devs were provided comprehensive brand guidelines for the N64 logo in the 3D rotation. So they only ever saw it front facing, but in intros and stuff, they wanted it to spin around and stuff. So he continues to say, so it wasn't until Nintendo did it themselves that the error became more noticeable. I think there's an N64 disk drive animation that reveals the details. Okay.
Interesting. Okay, that makes sense. That does make sense. All right. Kazooie can be heard in Diddy Kong Racing. False. That's not a thing.
Okay.
That's something that somebody made up, and it's been bandied about. Not true. Not true whatsoever.
One time I was playing Diddy Kong Racing, and Kazooie came up to me and squawked, but I don't think that's the same. That's just me hanging out with my friend Kazooie.
One time I saw Kazooie drinking a pina colada at Trader Vic's.
One time I saw Bottles outside of the Vons doing cocaine with Edward Scissorhands. It was fucked up.
Yes, and mystical powers of the Jiggies / Jinjos.
They have them. They're magical.
I like, the only thing I can think of that really like connects these two is that in Grunty's Revenge, we learn that Spiral Mountain used to be not only the home of the Jinjo Kingdom before Grunty displaced them and built her lair, but it was also the home of Jiggy Wiggy's cult, the Church of Jiggy Wiggy. And so there's a lot of magic going on in Spiral Mountain back in the day between the mystical powers of the Jinjo and the power of the Jiggies. And, I could spend hours, Mitchell, discussing Jiggies and how they're connected to the Shroud Breaker or from Sea of Thieves. I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, I mean, you could, but you don't even need to go further than the first two main games to see them do magic stuff. So I don't get what this is about.
Right.
Sure. Sure. Banjo is in more driving games than platforming games. True.
True from a certain point of view.
How would you count it?
All right, Banjo-Kazooie, Banjo-Tooie. I mean, with Grunty's Revenge, right?
Okay. Yeah.
Grunty's Revenge Mobile, which is
I'm out.
Yeah, it's a different configuration of Grunty's Revenge. Things are laid out differently. I would count it. Grunty's Revenge Missions.
Stop. So I got 3. Kazooie 2 and Grunty's Revenge.
Now, nuts and bolts, though, I mean, you could classify that as a driving game, sure, but it's more of a hybrid.
It's more about driving than platforming. I would edge on the side of calling it a driving game.
But it's not a racing game. And
no, but they say driving.
I know, but it's splitting hairs.
Okay, well, if you have Kazooie 2 in Grunty's Revenge, then you have Diddy Kong Racing, Banjo-Pilot, Banjo-Kazooie Nuts and Bolts, and Sega and Sonic All-Stars Racing Transformed. So I guess that's more. I'm trying to think if there's any other platforming game that Banjo...
Minecraft.
No, I don't think so. I would not call Minecraft a platformer.
I know. I might as well call Smash Brothers Ultimate a platforming game. Yeah, okay, I'll begrudgingly accept it if you're going to throw cold water on the mobile games.
If they were actually different content and not just a subsection of content, then I would accept it. But missions, I wouldn't. Because missions is just the mini games. That's not platforming.
Yeah, but Grunty's Revenge Mobile is kind of like the handheld version of Grunty's Revenge, even if Grunty's Revenge was a handheld game.
Okay.
Banjo Land.
It has a point. There's a point. Banjo Land, Boggy's Kids. This was recent.
Yes. This was very recent. This was surprising. So it turns out two of Boggy's kids are hiding in Banjo Land, but nobody ever knew it because they're running around pretty far away from the main objective when they can be visible. So it was just one of these things where not enough people put enough time and nuts and bolts to like really go off the beaten path to find this, and here it was. I forget which. I think Soggy was one of them.
Yeah, I don't remember the exact.
No, where... I'll tell you. Damn it.
Okay.
It's
Go for it.
Yeah.
Oh, you weren't going to do it. You just got mad at me for no reason.
No. It's a Soggy and Moggy were in the game. Groggy was not, or at least has not been found as of yet.
Yeah, I think it. Sometimes when we're talking about Banjo, we get in this headspace about talking about this series, and things like Grunty's Revenge feel very important to us. But then, of course, there are tons of very dedicated Banjo fans that have never played Grunty's Revenge, and I guess that's fine. They're missing out. It's good. But sometimes it's worth remembering that even Nuts and Bolts really did not sell very many copies at all.
No.
And it's relatively unexplored compared to the N64 games. There's stuff like this all over the place. I bet we're not done finding out new things about Nuts and Bolts. I bet Groggy is findable.
Yep, sure. Let's find Groggy tonight, Mitchell. Let's go.
Tonight. I don't know.
All right.
Banjo Frog ending.
Banjo Frog ending, which I believe I've asked for in the massage parlor once.
This is the original plan for the ending of Banjo-Kazooie. Was that last spell that Grunty fires was supposed to hit Banjo, and he turns into a frog, and so you're supposed to be a frog, and sort of like the end of a Metroid game, just like run down the lair as it's crumbling.
Yes.
As a frog, which is hard to do.
If you ever tried to run as a frog,
pretty
hard.
I haven't tried doing things as other animals very often, but it didn't. I guess they didn't think it was fun. We know it got pretty far along into the planning stages because the only reason Grunty fires that last spell was because of this ending.
Yeah.
And that stayed in the final game.
And also, obviously they should have realized that Banjo, who had been in Diddy Kong Racing, would know that the quickest way to cure him would be to run over him with a car. So
that's true. That would have broken my immersion if he forgot that.
Definitely. Would have broken mine for sure. Kazooie, always pregnant.
Yeah, it's not even Kazooie is always pregnant, which is the original quote. Just Kazooie always pregnant. I'm sorry, Tevlev. You made a cool thing. We're making fun of you, and I'm sorry. Kazooie always pregnant is, of course, our dear friend Daly Johnson doing.
Yes,
she tweeted once that Kazooie is always pregnant. And
on the Platonic account,
right?
Yes,
I think it's important that it's her though.
No, it is. Yeah. But it's also important. The reason it's on this is because it came from Platonic's official Twitter account.
Yeah, I've talked with Daly about this independently, and
as have I.
She won't give me more details, so it's just what it is. If you want to take Daly's word for it, or the official Platonic Twitter account's word for it, you are free to do so. It's your headcanon. I think you need to work on a banjo game in some fashion before you're able to play around with balls this big. But I'm into
this is how she operates, and we just have to accept it.
I guess the point is Kazooie's always ready to shoot an egg.
Yes, but it's walking into a complete misunderstanding of how laying eggs works. With things like chickens, right? Because the eggs aren't always fertilized. That's how we get eggs from the grocery store. They lay eggs no matter what. It's not that they're pregnant; it's that they lay eggs. But if they're pregnant, then the eggs are fertilized, and that's where we get baby birds. Chickens.
Counter, you don't know the specifics about how Breagle biology has to work uniquely. It might be like other birds. Maybe it's not. You don't know.
Mitchell, that was my major. All right. So, counter, you need to start trusting the experts. Sure. And I know in America in 2020, we're anti-science and any expert opinion is viewed as the deep state, but you need to view me as an expert and you need to get back to trusting experts. Like the good old days.
Clanker died.
Yeah. I don't know if he's officially dead, but he's been dismantled. Being a partly cyborgnetic being, mechanical, he could be rebuilt, but he has been dismantled in Banjo Land.
Oh, that's not what I'm thinking this is about.
Oh. Well,
I'm thinking this is about because I feel that the thing in Banjo Land is a recreation. That's my assumption.
Could be.
But Clanker did die in the concept art to Fast and the Furriest.
Oh,
where Clanker's big old bloated rib cage and torn up body is drivable through. It's pretty gruesome, actually, but it's in the rare replay video. This is what I thought this was about, but maybe actually you're right. I don't know what this.
It could. I mean, the many deaths of Clanker the whale shark. We don't know, but it should be pointed out though that ignoring Banjo Land, ignoring that appearance in Nuts and Bolts, which could be a recreation. The last canonical appearance of Clanker was in Banjo-Pilot, where he was happily living above Clanker's cavern in Clanker's river, which is he's outside. Everything's bright and cheery for him now. He was happily in the background of that racing track.
I think that's the same mentality as giving people on death row a last meal of their choosing.
Oh God.
We're gonna let him see the outside clean water before we just completely tear through him while racing as fast as we can and just destroying
what we need to
his
do,
ribcage.
What we need to do, Mitchell, is we need to tweet Andy Robinson and see how he feels about Clanker dying.
I don't like it. Okay, so this is weird. Crystal Cave's Ice Key. I guess that wasn't what they were talking about with Ice Key True Function.
Yeah, Ice Key True Function could have been anything. Crystal Cave's Ice Key, though, this is what I was talking about, where when you brought the Ice Key into Donkey Kong 64, animation has been found. Actually, Rare Gamer has an excellent feature on the history of Stop and Swap, where they have a GIF even, if you want to go that far, of what this animation found in the code is. It zooms into. Can I just jump down to this next part, because this actually ties right into this. The DK house fridge.
Right. That's what I would have assumed a true function of the Ice Key might have been about.
So in early screenshots of Donkey Kong 64, in Donkey Kong's treehouse, his watchtower, as we call him, DK Vine, there is this mysterious refrigerator. Some people call it a freezer. Some people call it a shower with Banjo and Kazooie's head on the side. And this is long been speculated, especially once the code for ice key was found in the game, that this was going to somehow be the device that would bring the ice key into Donkey Kong 64. It'd be somehow tied to the ice key. And indeed, there is unused animation. Now the freezer or refrigerator is no longer in the game, but there is this animation of a cut to the treehouse interior, and then the camera pans around and zooms in exactly where the freezer would be. It's been replaced in the final game with, I think, like a dynamite, so like a plunger maybe.
I always thought that's where the original Donkey Kong arcade game should have gone. I feel like it would have been a cool place there. But
that would have been a cool place there, but the camera zooms in and then it cuts to Crystal Caves, and it just spins around and there's nothing there. But the implication that can be inferred is that the ice key would have unlocked something in Crystal Caves.
Can I comment really quick on what Jeff just said in the chat? Because he called me
out.
What
did Jeff just say?
Well, he said Banjo was not in Transformed. He was in the first Sonic All-Stars game. I'm sorry, that is absolutely correct. I did say Transformed when I did not mean to. That's on me. I don't want to leave this episode, Hyle, and get people saying I don't know my stuff. I want to get all the corrections taken care of ahead of time. On
I let that slide, Mitchell, and I'll tell you why I let that slide. It's because you know how to spell and pronounce scenery. And I was like, well, he's a cut above this Mitchell T. Wolfe, and I'm going to let that slide. The fact that he put Banjo in the wrong Sonic the Hedgehog racing game.
So next is Banjo and Smash equals new game. It is a new game.
See, I took this to be kind of passive aggressive, the eternal strife of the hardcore Banjo fandom online, where, we're never getting a new Banjo-Kazooie game. The Banjo and Smash was supposed to pacify us. This is all we're getting for a new game. Woe is us. Maybe I'm just being overtly ultra cynical when I'm reading that interpretation. I think Banjo and Kazooie in Smash, all that's going to do is open up more possibilities for a new Banjo-Kazooie game in the future. So enjoy it because it's still relatively new.
I assumed that was more about you can play through all of World of Light as Banjo and Kazooie, and that kind of is a new Banjo game. Like that, you can just make it a new Banjo game that way.
I mean, sure. I read it the way I read it. You went at it in a more benevolent way.
I like Tevlev14, the Reddit user, for making this, and I don't want to assume the worst in him. So I think that
I wasn't even ascribing this to Tevlev. I was just thinking Tevlev pulled from multiple sources from the Banjo fandom, the community, for better and for worse.
Okay. Well,
I view
Tevlev as we know, is an unbiased observer of everything. Really, he's omniscient. But he's decided today to focus on Banjo, and for that I am thankful. The next item is Barrel Boy.
Barrel Boy!
I kind of know this.
I know what this is. Okay. So, Mitchell, once again, my favorite pairing of words in this episode is early screenshot. And early and screenshot. Early plus screenshot equals early screenshot. And one of the early screenshots seen from off of Banjo-Kazooie was in Banjo-Kazooie's house. Originally, there was a portrait of Donkey Kong. Yes, Donkey Kong.
See. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, and it was a render of Donkey Kong from the original Donkey Kong Country before he even had the really nice rendered fur. It was just like the plasticky crap on his face.
Love that shit.
Yeah. So later on in Banjo-Kazooie, when you activate the bottles puzzle, the secret bottles puzzle in Banjo and Kazooie's house, when you have to stare at that portrait of Bottles in their house, even though Banjo just met Bottles, Banjo and Kazooie just met Bottles at the beginning of the game, even though they have a portrait of him in their house, which opens up my theory, which would be, I think, tier 9 on this, that Banjo is an international art thief, and he's using Tootie to smuggle religious artifacts. Anyway, Kazooie calls Bottles Barrel Boy, and it doesn't apply to Bottles at all, because usually Kazooie, when she does her insult comic shtick towards Bottles, it usually refers to his eyesight or the fact that he's a mole, which, I mean, they go hand in hand, but, the root muncher, worm breath, corpse boy,
tub thumper.
Yeah. Cat dinner. But anyway.
Mud flapper. Yeah. For sure.
Barrel Boy doesn't apply. But it would apply if she was talking to Donkey Kong. And so the idea that maybe originally Donkey Kong was going to host this thing, and they decided to remove that. Maybe this even ties into the connection to Donkey Kong 64, and this would be how you bring the ice key over to Donkey Kong 64, is Donkey Kong would actually appear in the portrait and talk to Banjo and Kazooie and be like, hey, give me that ice key.
That ice. I think that barrels, to emphasize the sheer thickness of Bottles' glasses, are not, because she's called him Bottle, like his name's Bottles. Yeah. Like to just export that and say, okay, even bigger barrels, is kind of, I don't know. That could be it, but it isn't. I think it's the Donkey Kong thing.
I think Steve from Rare Gamer, who I view as the stop and swap expert outside of Rare, a lot of his assertions have been confirmed by Paul Makachek.
We're under the iceberg now.
We're drowning right now. I can't the pressure is mounting and it's dark. We are in the final frontier of Earth right here, where beasties live. And so here we go. Quadrant 4, the final quadrant. Banjo adopted by Cazuls. And Mitchell, you didn't know what... We talked about this when you pitched the episode to me. You're like, hey, I don't know what this is. And I said, I know what this is.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because I have a lot of useless junk. And some of that useless junk are action figures that line the cupboard above my desk. And one of those action figures is the Banjo action figure from the Diddy Kong Racing toy line released by Toy Biz in the late 1990s. And on the back, it says that Banjo was adopted by the Cazul family. And this is nonsense. This is nothing. This was Toy Biz, I think Greg Mails was asked this, and he said what he thinks happened is Toy Biz had this like blurb about Banjo that Rare wrote at some point, and it said that Banjo was adopted by Kazooie, kind of like ever since Banjo and Kazooie partnered up, he's essentially, his life has been taken over by Kazooie, or in more poetic terms, he was adopted by Kazooie. Toy Biz somehow completely botched this and said he was adopted by the Cazul family.
Yeah.
And
we know
so,
this is not true because of Chris Elcock.
Yes. Well, but Cazul just sounds
higher than the back of a toy.
No, this was never in game. This is not even from Rare. This is like mistranslated, like the Jungle Beat interview was mistranslated. And so many people have walked away from this thinking that Kazooie is Kazooie Cazul, who raised Banjo, or her parents raised Banjo. No, Cazul is not even a thing. It sounds like something from Ghostbusters. It's nothing. It's nonsense.
Here's the trick though, Hyle.
Yeah.
If there wasn't anything to contradict this, even though I know it's like a mistranslation, I would hold this as the thing to believe. Because there's nothing to contradict it, and it's a semi-official release. It's not in the game, which means that anything in-game later, in a future game or anything at all, could potentially dispute this. And do it pretty easily, because this is like really tangential. But it's not been overwritten. But except it was. It was overwritten by Chris Alcock and the Rare Limited Twitter account, which I hold in higher regard than the back of a toy from 1997.
Yeah, not even 97. This was like 99, I think, this toy line came out.
Oh, really?
It came out right alongside the Mario Kart 64 toy line. So, like, they were released simultaneously. But, yeah, I think that this is before Rare had a whole department designed for, like, brand management for things like product. Now it's like headed by Adam Park. And so like they keep a tight lid on shit like this these days.
Ooh, Greg Mails has a good quote according to Cameron in the chat.
Okay.
Greg Mails once said, I guess, I wrote the original Banjo description, and this isn't quite right due to a couple of typos. It should be adopted by Kazooie, and Kazooie would never turn down the chance for an adventure. Banjo just wants the easy life. So, okay. I think Greg Mails outranks Alcock on this, so maybe Banjo was adopted by Kazooie instead of Ptolemy Von Ghoul.
Well, I think adopted by Kazooie is, again, poetic. I don't think it's supposed to be literally the orphan Banjo was adopted by Kazooie, because I think they just met, like they hadn't even met before the events of Diddy Kong Racing. So anyway, we don't know. But there is no such thing as Cazul. There is no Dana. Only
there's
Cazul.
Very little really, really official information about before, like Banjo and Kazooie's life before Banjo-Kazooie. There's some stuff about the world before Banjo-Kazooie from Grunty's Revenge, but not the characters.
The only thing we have to go off is the Diddy Kong Racing bio, which says even before the start of his future partnership with Kazooie, which could be inferred in a couple different ways. So anyway, King Jingling owns Spiral Mountain. I don't know why my voice is taking on the cadence of John Lovitz all of a sudden. King Jingling owns Spiral Mountain. I just can't help myself when we talk about Banjo-Kazooie. So this comes from Grunty's Revenge, and it's a bit of a misreading, I believe. The idea was that Spiral Mountain, the whole valley, but especially the mountain where Grunty's lair was, is the homeland for the Jinjos before Grunty moved in and kicked them out.
Yeah.
And we see underneath the classic Grunty's lair head, the entrance to Grunty's lair, in Grunty's Revenge, which is a time travel adventure back to 1978. There is the displaced stone head of King Jingling. So, it's not that he owns Spiral Mountain, is that the Jinjos used to live in Spiral Mountain, in the mountain. King Jingling's head was where Grunty's head now is in the present day. And, that's that.
Yeah, it's a pretty weighty piece of lore, actually.
It is. It's one of my favorite things in Grunty's Revenge, because it's only spoken of, the Jinjos mention their homeland, and then we also see that, and it's never spoken of. Jingling doesn't even appear anywhere else in Grunty's Revenge. So it's one of the reasons I love Grunty's Revenge and all the world building it does, because it fills in all the little gaps like Cock from the hardware store.
Same here for sure. And I think it even like speaks back to some stuff that was in the original Banjo-Kazooie game. Like, why would those statues of Jinjos be there at the top of Grunty's lair if it's Grunty's lair? Well, the answer is it wasn't always Grunty's lair, and it was a Jinjo lair.
Yes.
Why would Grunty's lair have portals to other places that, like, a lot of them really don't have anything to do with Grunty? Well, it was probably... all those portals were probably originally put there by the Jinjos to do magic Jinjo things.
Well, remember that the Church of Jiggy Wiggy was also located in Spiral Mountain, and their whole shtick is opening up the portals to these realms. So...
Right. Well, that goes through Spiral Mountain. And I guess the King Jingling owned Spiral Mountain reading is only as true as if you believe having your face on the wall somewhere means that you own it.
Right.
It definitely means the Lair was the Jinjo owned by the Jinjos. I don't know if it means Spiral Mountain was.
Well, that would be like saying 4 U.S. presidents own South Dakota.
Right.
Yeah.
And really just one does because of the government.
That's not how government works, Mitchell. Oh, civics classes have failed us.
Yeah.
All right. So, banjo equals guy in suit?
I know this one.
Oh, do you? Okay.
Yeah. So, the German official Nintendo magazine had a comic that ran that often crossed over a bunch of the Game Boy Color and 64 era, that time period-ish, Nintendo properties, and Banjo-Kazooie was considered among them. So they went on an adventure in one of these comics. They did something, and one of them ended with I'm gonna get the phrasing wrong, but it was basically like, are our heroes gonna save the day? What's gonna happen in the next comic? Will Banjo ever take off his bear suit? Find out next time. And it's just a joke. It's,
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's the implications that Banjo's a guy in a bear suit, but it's just they're just poking fun.
It reminds me of like Super Mario Wiki, which like has an entry on all of those obscure comics and like treats them as like, oh yeah, obviously this happened.
I really like those comics, but they're obviously, Rare had no idea that some weird publishing company in Germany was doing anything with their characters.
Exactly. It's why like I hold up Chris Alcock's novel on a higher tier of canon than any of this stuff from the 90s.
Yeah, we've never really I mean I say we, I mean you really DK Vine, I should say, has never really taken a measuring stick to like, okay, exactly where do things fall? Like in-game evidence we know is the highest, and just like hearsay from someone who might have been attached to the game at some point is like maybe the lowest. But like stuff like that, an official Nintendo magazine, this sounds pretty good. In Germany, it's worse. Like I don't know where it falls. I do not think it's canon. I do like that comic though a lot. I think it's fun. It's fun to see any remnants of when Nintendo like fully bought into Rare IPs as being their own and really tried to hold them up to the same level and got them interacting with Mario and Link and stuff. It's just a fun thing.
Andre in the live stream says, in reference to the King Jingling owned Spiral Mountain thing, so why is this on the bottom? This is a non-missable detail in, granted, one of the lesser known Banjo games, but still, I think it's because it's Grunty's Revenge. And yes, it's non-missable. Yes, it's a big fucking deal for people, weirdos really, who read DK Vine. But I think, for the larger populace who've probably only played Kazooie and Tooie, maybe nuts and bolts, this is not well known. Like Grunty's Revenge lore is not well known among most people. So,
it's the DK Vine way of thinking that every game that's come out in a series is in continuity unless there's very specific in-game reason to not think that. I personally will default to what the makers of the game say about it. So, like, if they say, we made this one and this one is not canon, I will believe them. But that's not what everyone says. And I think that Grunty's Revenge in general is just like, I think it's very clearly canon, but it's also very clearly missable as a game. It wasn't in Rare Replay, like you said, and yeah, it's a shame that game should be played more, especially because people that are just saying like, I want another game that's like Kazooie or Tooie. It's like, I guess it's not technically like it, but it's also a lot like it. You know, you're going through different worlds. It's kind of 3D. You're exploring. You're getting jiggies.
Honestly, like anybody who really loved the overworld of Impossible Lair,
Grunty's Revenge is just that.
And you're wanting a new Banjo game at the same time, but you haven't played Grunty's Revenge, don't talk to me. Don't even fucking talk to me.
Yeah.
It's right there. It's waiting for you.
And we can't publicly say that you should use an emulator and pirate the ROM. That's the end of that sentence.
But if you have a Game Boy Advance and you have eBay...
Yeah. I wonder what it's going for on eBay right now. That's what I'm gonna do that on the show. Good pod.
Can I go ahead and go on to the next one while you do that?
Yeah, you started that one.
Rusty Bucket Bay is connected to Grunty Incorporated, which I assume means Grunty Industries. I didn't know what this one...
garage door?
I didn't know what this one was, and I looked it up prior to the show. I did some homework, Mitchell, and I traced it back to the Rare Witch Project around 2013, I think. So this is quite in the era that you referred to earlier, where you pitied them.
Sure.
Okay, so there is a door. The doors don't even really look the same, in my opinion. But maybe I'm not viewing this from the right angle or lighting conditions. Apparently some people think a door on the exterior, in the exterior area of Grunty Industries and Banjo-Tooie looks a lot like a door in Rusty Bucket Bay. Mitchell, are you there?
Hyle, yeah, sorry, you dropped out for a second. It looks like, yeah, it does. It looks like the garage door for the port that the Rusty Bucket is in.
Yeah, I don't think it's that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think so either, because I think all of the worlds that you can warp to in Banjo-Kazooie are probably not nearby.
No, and actually,
one possible exception of Mad Monster Mansion.
Okay,
because that's where Grunty's from.
I was just going to bring up the point that Treasure Trove Cove, we know, is in the Sea of Thieves. It's actually like in the Devil's Shroud of the Sea of Thieves at the current time in Sea of Thieves from when we can access it right now. But we know from the in-game intro that it is one of the charted islands that exists there. So we know where Treasure Trove Cove is, but not anywhere near the Isle o' Hags. At least not that we know of. And I don't think it's just a quick jaunt.
I don't think it's too far away. I mean, I think it's far away enough to not be on that immediate nearby map of the Sea of Thieves at the time of Sea of Thieves, but I bet it's like a couple maps off screen from that map.
The point is, though, you can access it from a portal in the Lair, and I don't think that means that it's also accessible through a garage door.
Yeah. I guess the argument against that would be that it doesn't not mean that.
No, but this is like grasping at straws, and this is like a theory where they might have partially reused an asset, but I don't even think they look that similar. So maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I'm the asshole. I don't know. But
well, I guess that the question would be, if it's not for that, then what's that gate for?
What's any door in any of these games for?
Well, here's what I'll say. Grunty's Industries, which this incorrectly says is Grunty Incorporated. Sorry, Tenlev, I can't let that one slide. Is a factory. It makes stuff. So
it makes underpants. That is what it makes.
Especially in the late 90s, if you're a factory in a British-influenced area, you export things, you do it by boat. So it's for a boat. Whether it's for the Rusty Bucket or not, I don't know if it matters. It's for exporting goods through boat travel, is what I'll say.
Underpants. That is what they make.
They make them underpant.
They do. Kazooie's family. I almost missed this one. Kazooie's family.
Yeah. I'm not... I know a few things of what this could be. I'm not entirely sure what they're getting at.
Is this more about the Cazuls?
Might be. It might be about the Breagles at Breagle Beach in Grunty's Revenge.
Right, but it was never implied that there was any familial connection there. Mm-hmm. Like, Kazooie never said, "This is my grand uncle Peeves."
Yeah. There's also some implication that Banjo might have found Kazooie in an egg and hatched her. And if
that is my fanon that I brought to DK Vine back in 1999.
Yeah, so if that happened, then Kazooie doesn't have one other than Banjo.
Right, because what happened to Kazooie's parents?
Probably Breagle Beach was like genocided. We should
ask Andy Robinson how he feels about Breagle genocide.
Don't like it.
All right, we got two more to go.
I think we failed that one. I think we didn't accurately. I just don't know what
I think you're right. I think it's referring to Breagle Beach, saying, "Hey, that's probably Kazooie's family." To which I say, "No, it is not. It is. No, I stuttered there. No, it is not." Kevlev.
All right. I mean, maybe.
Poor Kevlev is like, why is there a whole podcast dunking on me? This isn't fair.
His name's Tevlev.
Shut up, Mitchell T. Wolfe. I don't care. All I care about is Kazooie always pregnant and Clanker died.
Clanker died. Don't like that. Mumbo taught Grunty to use magic, and then Grunty stole his face.
I think this one is more well known than some of... this one was obscure. I think it's been brought back, and it's at least in the third quadrant now. It should not be in the fourth quadrant.
I think that both of the clauses in this sentence are a little bit wrong as written. I don't think Grunty stole his face. I don't think she has it. I think it's under there. I think his old face is still in there, but it's covered. And also, Mumbo taught Grunty to use magic. Possibly true. So there was reason to believe this. It was in the original, I think, manual for their bios, right?
Yeah. It basically, they set up Mumbo and Grunty to be like an Obi-Wan, Kenobi, Anakin Skywalker situation. And we know from Brentilda clues in the game that Grunty has studied magic around the world. She went to witch school. She did all sorts of things. And she went to study, at least in the Banjo-Kazooie instruction manual, it's that she went to study under Mumbo Jumbo and then decided to turn to the dark side and use bad magic or use magic for bad purposes. Mumbo confronted Grunty about it, and Grunty went, and put the skull on his face. And the only issue with this is that it said that Mumbo's true face would be restored upon Grunty's defeat.
Well, Grunty never quite dies. She always hangs on a little bit.
Rare initially, at least according to old school scribes, or maybe the Tepid Seat, is something on Rare's website back in the late 90s, through the channel of Lee Loveday, said that they were originally planning to restore Mumbo's face following Grunty's defeat at the end of Banjo-Kazooie, and then they realized Mumbo looked like crap. And we don't know like how far they actually got in like designing him sans mask, but they realized the mask was the marketable part of the character. Let's not ruin this character, so they ignored it.
Also, like, you think Mumbo would make a house out of a skull if that's not what his real face looks like? Like, I mean, I guess that is the implication, but it is weird.
It is. Now, the only wrinkle to this, Mitchell, is that Grunty's Revenge did some major retconning to both Mumbo and like the implied history there, where when we time travel back to 1978, Mumbo is a novice shaman who doesn't really have all but like the basics down. Meanwhile, Grunty is already established in Spiral Mountain building her lair. So it makes it seem like Mumbo wouldn't be this wise shaman she would turn to like complete her training. It doesn't really add up. So I've like hypothesized, and I have nothing to go on. This is based on nothing but my own idea to like plug this gap in the canon, that maybe instead of Mumbo teaching Grunty, they had another shaman who taught them. And then Mumbo confronted Grunty, and that's when the disfigurement happened. But that's based on nothing but my own fanon.
Yeah, I think my way of sort of making this make sense all the way through is that different people learn different parts of disciplines at different rates. So the fact that Grunty wanted to learn something from Mumbo does not necessarily imply that Mumbo was the superior magician at first, or anything like that. Maybe Mumbo was just really focused on transformation magics, and Grunty never learned that specific thing, so wanted to learn that.
Sure.
Which is realistic, and I like, people learn from people either, you know, however you want to say it, less educated or whatever, in specific fields all the time.
I would say Grunty never really learned much from Mumbo, considering she couldn't get the frog spell to work.
Well, that's just about aim.
Also, I think Mumbo owes Grunty an apology, because now it's 2020 and he's wearing a mask all the time. So who's the jerk now?
Grunty. It's been 50 years since the 70s.
Okay, wise guy. It's only been 42 years since 1978. So I don't want to like, let's not like age up Mumbo any more than we have to.
You're right. Let's not do that. The last one is Grunty will get her life back by using B.O.B. on Showdown Town in Banjo 3. That's just a guess.
It also strikes me that this sentence, if you gave it to the average layman or laywoman on the street, like, hey, can you decipher what this means? They would not be able to. Yeah, Grunty will get her life back by using Bob on Showdown Town in Banjo 3.
Yeah, I'm going back to the Reddit post that Tevlev14 originally posted this on. I'm seeing if anyone mentioned that. I don't think anyone mentioned that. Someone said, "You forgot the Great Jinjo War."
Wait, what?
And no one replied to it. It just.
Oh my god! Is there a Great Ape War?
I think this refers to the devastated state of the King Jingling, Ephes in Grunty's Revenge.
Yeah, Grunty drove them out. There's no like.
Well, maybe they fought back. Maybe there was a great war about it.
But as a Donkey Kong fan, I have to combat the Great Ape War, which doesn't exist, is not a thing, is a made-up thing that cites like, I believe Kotaku ran it on a slow news day, and now I have to deal with the ruins of my cherished Donkey Kong lore, because nobody understands what the real lore is anymore, because memes, and I don't need that for Banjo. Anyway, this is just like, what do I want to happen in Banjo 3? Well, we have to kill off Showdown Town because I hate nuts and bolts. Like, well, that, it strikes me as mean-spirited.
I've told you this before, Hyle. I'm not ready to pin that on our friend Tevlev.
Okay.
Okay, here's an interesting thing. This is the only post I found on this.
I've already burned any bridges.
This is the only reply I found on this post that seems to be about a different thing that someone wanted to say, like, hey, this is like a whole thing. The last time this was posted, I mentioned the big clucker death cutscene in Click Clock Woods. Does anyone know what the deal with that is? So that's from Sexy Sax Man. Got a couple... I don't know what that is. So, but Tevlev replies and says, that was always weird. But to be clear, I made this image. So if anyone else posted another Iceberg image, it was someone else's. But they seem to recognize the concept of the big clucker death cutscene in Click Clock Woods. Someone else replies, sorry, I'm doing this now. So strange. Maybe someone was keen to show off their animation? Oh, okay. So that's the only thing I can think of. They put so much effort into the bird animation compared to the slug that they wanted to make sure you could get a good view of it falling? I totally agree with you. Or perhaps the birds were originally part of a Jiggy. Just like, oh, I know what these are. Which means you do too, so we don't need to do it.
I do. I know what it is. And I don't know why people would be like, why isn't that on the iceberg? Out of all the things that could be on the iceberg, the birds in Click Clock Wood and the way they fall. Why isn't that on the iceberg?
It is weird that it's its own animation.
I guess. I mean, I guess, like, maybe they had to, like, separate it from just, like, in-game action to, like, physically remove them from the... Because maybe it didn't work right. I don't know. I don't know how things work, Mitchell.
Mm-hmm.
I just know that there's no such thing as the Cazuls. And I know that that Barrel Boy might be referring to Donkey Kong.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that rare games take place in same world.
They do. They take place in same world.
Well, this was us discussing the Banjo-Kazooie Iceberg.
Yeah.
I suppose now would be a good time to get in our final thoughts. Let me check in with Dre to see if his cherished childhood memories have been erased. Dre, how are we doing with the erasure of your past? How's that going? What if he erased himself?
He says not good.
Oh, sorry to hear that. Sorry to hear that. Captain Cheesebag says this was a great episode, to be honest. So we'll have to put that on the iceberg for this episode. That it was a great episode. I think that would be in the fourth quadrant, near the bottom.
Is there anything you would add to this iceberg, Hyle, that wasn't... like, for real, though? That is
for real. Here? Espresso being a Banjo-Pilot, I feel like that's a big thing for me. If Barrel Boy is going to be on there, I feel like the fact that a Donkey Kong character appeared in a Banjo game post-buyout, a character that Nintendo owns, appeared in a Banjo game in like 2005 would be a pretty fucking big deal. I would put something about Mr. Pants being on the TV, Boggy's TV in Banjo-Tooie. I feel like that's important for me.
I would probably put Cameo's spellbook in the dumpster in Nuts and Bolts. I think that's interesting.
Yeah, I would mention something about Grab by the Ghoulies and the chalkboard for Stop and Swap in Grab by the Ghoulies. Also something about Royston appearing in many, many Rare and Platonic games and just Ed Bryan projects in general.
Yeah, those are good.
Yep.
I don't know if it would go anywhere, but I feel like the Buzz Bomb spirit in Smash is just notable. That wouldn't go on this. I just think about that sometimes. It's weird that it has one, and other much more notable Banjo characters don't.
It is weird how that random baddie was elevated because of Smash Brothers to this higher status than we could have ever conceived.
Humba Wumba doesn't have one. Jingling doesn't have one.
Yeah. Andre is thrown shade at me, saying that my Banjo Iceberg would be about any game but Banjo. No, it would tie back to Banjo because in Grab by the Ghoulies there is the chalkboard, the blackboard that like further perpetuates these Stop and Swap conspiracy theories. I mean, Grab
is obviously it needs to be at the bottom of the iceberg.
Yes, I'll allow that one. As much as I adore that piece of Chris Alcock lore, I
just feel special ownership over that.
I know you do, and I will never deprive you of that. The fact that Mumbo had a fling with Honeybee, I feel like that's a nice piece of trivia. That
Mumbo's many romances.
Yeah. The fact that Mumbo keeps it wet through
Thanks for keeping it wet, Mumbo.
Yeah, basically, like
the Tip Top Suite.
The Tip-Tops, of course, the Tip-Top Suite. If we're going to be talking about ejaculates, then we have to bring up the Tip-Top Suite, which was the room, for those that don't know, for those who are just tuning in because you're an iceberg enthusiast, the Tip-Top Suite is the room in Spiller's Harbor in Grunty's Revenge that is named the Tip-Top Suite. Tip-Top does not appear in Grunty's Revenge, by the way. But there is a room called the Tip-Top Suite that has lots of mysterious white stains on the carpet. And so my fanon, of course, was that this was the hotel room that Tip-Top's parents copulated in many times. And like Ron Howard does with his children, they named their child after where he was conceived. And I actually, when I first met Pete Hentz from Rare, who designed the Tip-Top Suite. He was part of the Grunty's Revenge art team. When I met him in real life in 2015, nearly the first thing out of my mouth was, "Let me tell you about the Jizz Room from Grunty's Revenge." And he was delighted, as anybody would be.
He was like, "I already know about it."
No, he was like, "All right, that's canon." So Tip-Top Suite for sure, yeah. Anything else you would put on, Mitchell? Let me ask the live stream too what they would put on.
Naughty and Quick Lock Wood is a naughty from DKC. Yeah, that's what that'd Jeff be fairly said, high up. I think that'd be like on the first or second tier. The ghost pirate ship in Spiller's Harbor, coming out of Deadeye Dre says that. I think that's a good point. It looks like it comes out of a Devil's Shroud-like thing as well.
Well, so. It materializes exactly like the new ghost ships in Sea of Thieves materialize. It's almost exactly the same. So nice piece of cross-current continuity there. Although I feel like Kevin Tevin here is
Blevin. Their name's Blevin. Come on, Hyle.
Blevin, sorry. I feel like they're probably not up on Sea of Thieves and all of the Banjo lore that has come out of that game, because I see nothing on this iceberg about it. So
I think the only thing I would put there is Banjo and Kazooie were prophesized.
Yeah, I mean that would be the big one. Like, we don't need to say Captain Skeleton from off of Grunty's Revenge is obviously tied into Captain Flameheart's Ghost Fleet in Sea of Thieves.
It's
because
like
that's
one
just...
last remaining ghost ship that's been wandering the seas long since the Sea of Thieves stopped being about pirates. That'd be depressing and fun.
Gibbons says, just talking about the Melanie, or he says Madeline being the melon girl. Who's Madeline? Yeah. Who's Madeline?
Oh, Edson's girlfriend from Dream.
Oh, shit!
Yeah.
I hadn't even thought about that.
Yeah, that's the thing. I think the on Twitter it was confirmed that is not Madeline. In fact,
there's already a lot of
either Steve Mails
things.
Or someone equivalent to someone worth a Steve Mails or two said that's not her, but they do look very similar, and that might have just been because that's how they draw women. That's how they draw human women at that time.
Yeah, on DK Vine we refer to her as Melanie because but she does look very similar to Sexy Grunty. Except with blonde hair and
right.
a more Caucasian skin palette.
Okay. All right.
Andre says, how about Goldilocks and Little Bear? Well, yeah, sure, but that would be like 10th tier if we're really expanding this iceberg. But yeah.
Yeah, that's just one of the many places Royston has gone.
Well, not just Royston, but the fact that the room Royston is in also has a banjo in it, and it has a picture, like a scribbled picture of a bear with a bird that it's implied to be Banjo-Kazooie, just off model due to it being a child's drawing. So the implication is that Little Bear knows Banjo, little like that. So it goes a little bit deeper than just here's a goldfish.
There's so many things in Grunty's Revenge that if we're just pointing out things in Grunty's Revenge that are contributors to the lore that are just regular in the game.
Jeff says, how about the golf clubs? I don't know what that refers to.
Golf clubs.
Golf clubs.
Is there a thing where Kazooie is used as a golf club at some point? Like her neck stretched out?
Waiting on Jeff to confirm what he means by the golf clubs.
Why did you skip me? Sorry, Jeff.
What about
the umbrella handle in Bad Fur Day is what Cameron is assuming Jeff's talking about.
Kazooie being the umbrella handle in the closet in the Cock and Plucker in Bad Fur Day.
Jeff just guessed that something about golf clubs might be. And then he asked why we skipped him because he had that very important thing about golf clubs that he wanted to
So
talk
Jeff
about.
Is just gaslighting us. Thank you, Jeff. All right.
Yeah, that was
really great. This is why we shouldn't bring Jeff into this is why I never invite Jeff to a threesome, because it just gets weird.
In the end, I just wanted to say I enjoy this practice of listing a bunch of mysteries about things because I learned some stuff. I came out of this a little more educated about something I care about. I think the facts, the Banjo-Kazooie Facts Twitter account should make this and go ahead and they should do their own. I think they would do I don't want to say a better one because Tevlev 14 really put his soul into it. But it could have been a more full of real things that are legitimately in the game.
There's a lot more concrete bits of trivia, especially post Rare Replay, when we actually know so much about betas and early versions and canceled projects that you could really fill this out a little bit more. But
Trophy then Thomas again, is James Thomas.
Yeah, but then again, Mitchell, Blackeye's chest.
It's hairy.
This has been a File 2 production. Que rico.